Shalom and good evening. I'm Joel Blackford. This is Blackford Talks Prophecy. I'm rather excited. I have another honored guest on tonight. We've done so well this summer. We've had such great guests, scholars, brilliant people, great thoughts, very educational. We have another great guest, and his name is Dr. Stephen Pidgeon. And I've been following him since 2018. So there he is. And there, this is, let me show this real quick. This is my copy of his 2018 publication at Sefer, and I've been reading that for years, and I enjoy what he does. He's a great guy. Plus, he's knowledgeable. So, Stephen, would you introduce yourself and tell us you're someplace up in Alaska, you're playing around with moose and grizzly bears. So, where are you?
Yeah, well, thank you, Joel. Thank you for having me, and I really appreciate that. Yeah, I'm coming to you live from an undisclosed location somewhere in the
Yes.
fabulous state of Alaska. And Alaska, as you know, is the largest state in the union. We're actually in South Central Alaska, and so we live where most of the people live. The vast majority. And you're right, we play among the moose and the bear, and the salmon and the halibut. And so we've been here since 2021, and we've been rather enjoying it. And of course, our work continues at the Sefer Publishing Group. We have been involved with Sefer Publishing Group since 2012. We were actually formed in Israel in 2012. We were spending Sukkot there in Jerusalem at House 57. Four families came together, and we came together for purposes of printing a book that was otherwise being used by our Bible Fellowship, a home study group. And we had decided that we were going to print up texts so that we would have something to read that we were reading, that we were studying in the group. And so as a result, we launched on this project. And since we've launched on the project, I really do believe it was blessed by, the Ruach HaKodesh, that we were led in many, many ways, in many directions, and in many of the words that were chosen. And, the Sefer was built on three basic principles. It was built on the principles of transliteration, harmonization, and inclusion. And the reason being is that there were so many Bible publications at the time that were excluding, well, this term doesn't exist, and that term, and this term, and that term. And we took a position really contrary to the Westcott and Hort view, and instead incorporated many of the writings. And of course, we knew, for instance, that the Apocrypha was generally accepted reading in Europe, but the Apocrypha had new additions as a result of the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls. And the Dead Sea Scrolls had multiple copies of two books in particular: Enoch, which 11 fragments were found from 11 different texts, and Jubilees, of which 10 different texts were found. And so this led us into our quest to include these works, as well as Second Baruch, which was also included in the Ethiopian Bible. Remember that both Jubilees, Enoch, and Second Baruch were found in the Ethiopian text. And we actually used the translations from the Ethiopian text that had their origin in the early 19th century in Britain to include them in our text. And then, using our three principles of transliteration, harmonization, and inclusion, we took the premise that although there may not be original Hebrew texts of the New Testament, and that includes even in reference to the Cochin manuscript that you and I had discussed via email, Joel, that the Cochin manuscript appears to be a fourth century manuscript.
Oh, it
And
does.
yeah,
Okay.
so I do think that the Cochin manuscript is a downstream manuscript. It's
Downstream. Okay.
yeah, it's quite. I mean, it's absolutely a beautiful work.
Okay.
Uh, but nonetheless, the Cochin manuscript was found, a resident at Cambridge University in Britain, which was
Oh,
kind of a shock because everybody expected that they would have been found at the Vatican, in the library there.
right,
But
right.
rather no, they were found, and they're available actually online through the Cambridge Library. So the manuscripts they're extremely important, but nonetheless, it appears that the vast majority of the New Testament was conceived in Hebrew. I'm not going to say all of it, but the vast majority of it was conceived in Hebrew. And I believe that includes the book of Revelation, Chazon, that this
Oh yeah.
was conceived in Hebrew. And so, as a consequence, we wanted to use Hebraic concepts throughout the New Testament. This was the harmonization process. So, if you go back and you look at the KJV, it would have Isaiah in the Old Testament, Esaias in the New Testament, Elijah in the Old Testament, Elias in the New Testament, Holy Spirit in the Old Testament, Holy Ghost in the New Testament. And these distinctions I did not believe were warranted, and they were also confusing. And so, as a consequence, we harmonized the names throughout the text. And so, these kinds of things ultimately led to a completely unique text, the Sefer, which is unique compared to virtually every other text. Now, since then, we've had many editions. And your photo here shows the current publication, the Sefer
Right.
Millennium
Right.
Edition.
Yes.
One of the big differences in the Millennium Edition is the way we have couched the book. That is to say, the fonts are updated. It's a much more friendly reading environment. So
Okay.
instead of being confronted with all cap, all bold in your
Oh yeah.
face,
Oh yeah. There's a lot of that in the old version. Yes.
other than the old version, and the
Yeah.
problem with that is that when you're reading it, you're going along, okay, uh, Bereshith,
Right.
chapter 1 and chapter 2. However, all caps, all bold, you're screaming.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's so
It's
important,
creamy.
however, and therefore, So
Yeah.
anyway, I took all that stuff down. And so let's
Okay.
make this into a place that is really comfortable for the reader. So when you open it up, you go, yeah, this is my home. I can be here. I can take the time to read this text and go through it and to really enjoy it without having the assault of, you know, this is important to me or that's important to me, but rather let's just read the text. So that's pretty much where we are. Yeah.
How many languages do you read? Greek, Hebrew, Aramaic?
Yeah. Now I'm not a specialist in Aramaic. The
Okay.
Greek
Okay.
and the Hebrew, yes.
Okay.
I'm a student of both, the Koine and the biblical Hebrew in particular. And the
And
biblical Hebrew is,
okay.
biblical Hebrew is so different than modern Hebrew, right? There are many,
Yeah.
many words in modern Hebrew and many letters that don't exist in the biblical Hebrew. But
Right.
one of the things I discovered, and we're going to talk about this tonight, I hope, Joel, when we get
Yeah.
into
Oh yeah.
this, is when you deal with Hebrew, one of the critical things that you must do is to rightly divide the word.
Yes.
And sometimes this is missed by a lot of biblical scholars. And if you're new to this and you're looking at, various Hebrew passages, you may be looking at a word and going, okay, well, there's the word. How is that the word that Strong's over here is identifying when it doesn't look
Right.
anything like that? It's got 3 letters at the front I don't recognize and another 3 at the back I don't recognize. And where's the noon? And why is that a yod? And so you're looking at this and trying to get some kind of an idea. Well, in rightly dividing the word, you begin to discover what is really there. And when we start talking about the creation narrative in Genesis 1, it's absolutely explosive what is there. You mentioned it to me in the email, and I do want to talk about that because it's
Okay.
really critically important. And so this is one of the things that I've discovered in rightly dividing the word. So in rightly dividing the word, what comes about is an understanding of the Hebrew as to what is really there.
Right.
And this is the beauty of Hebrew as compared to any other. I also study other languages. I study Russian, I study Italian, Spanish.
Oh, I thought so. I had heard some Russian years ago. So okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, when you study Russian, really the focus of the language is work, работает, right? Work.
Okay.
We get the
Sure.
word robot. When you
Sure.
study French, you study body parts, right? Le
Right.
jambes longs, right?
Yeah.
Uh, cheveux blancs, les jambes longs, all right? But
Yeah.
when you study, and when you study Italiano is much more Italiano è parlato con il cibo di Italiano. You speak a lot more about food,
Sure.
right? Right, of course, right? The Italian lifestyle, la dolce vita.
Oh
But
yeah. Bella
but
Luna.
but
Well,
when
you
you
can't
study,
eat a moon, but anyway. Yeah.
but Hebrew is this language that is the only language that has depth of field I mean, really serious depth of field.
Sode level. Yep.
Yeah, it's level on level on level. And the
Yes.
critical aspect about the biblical Hebrew is that it's true here. And when you peel that skin away, the next layer is also true. The
Yeah.
next layer is also true. The next layer is also true.
Right.
And so you get revelation upon revelation upon revelation in terms of understanding these words. And what a difference it makes, because even in, well, we'll get to it, but even in Genesis 1:1, right?
Yeah. Sure.
The question of the word Elohim, right? We'll
Oh
talk,
yeah.
we have to talk about that word a wee bit. But we had discovered so many things in terms of rightly dividing the word. And there are so many things in terms of pronunciation. So, for instance, I'll give you an example. We hear Jonathan Kahn oftentimes, he talks about the Shemitah year, right? Well,
Yes, he does.
yeah, but the Shemitah is actually a Yiddishized pronunciation
I
for
didn't
the
know that.
word. Yeah, oh yeah, because the word is Shemitah. So
Oh,
generally speaking, in Hebrew, the emphasis is going to be on the ultimate syllable. So Shalom, Torah, etc. Right? It's on the ultimate syllable, unless you're dealing with the word like Chesed, Derek,
yep.
Melech. When you have two of the in a row, now we have the penultimate syllable is emphasized. So to
Right.
say Shemitah is to put an emphasis on the first syllable, which is not even the penultimate syllable, and ignoring the rule that says it must be pronounced Shemitah with the pronunciation on the end.
Sure.
So and in this way, we begin to kind of unwind. Like I'll give you another word that is
Yeah.
really kind of like this. So when you talk about mishpat,
Sure.
mishpat,
Mishpatim. Sure. Yeah.
yeah. So mishpatim, mishpat. Okay.
Yeah.
So what you see there is actually you have the mem at the beginning, and the mem is a prefix, which is a prefix to the word shofet. So
Sure.
so shofet is the judge. Mem
Sure.
is from the judge.
From.
Shofet, but
Sure.
it's pronounced mishpat because instead of taking the pay and saying pet, you say
Yeah.
fet,
Yep.
mishpat instead of mishofet. So
Sure.
mishofetim, shofetim is from the judgments, from the judge, right? From the judges.
Okay.
Mashofetim. Okay.
Beautiful. So, people, he was an attorney. He was a successful attorney. And then you switched over into translations and other things like that. What prompted you to leave being a successful attorney?
Well, I'm going to talk about the positive side of it, Joel, which is this: is that
Okay.
I began in 2012 with the Separate Publishing Group, and
Yeah.
and really the truth of it is that Yah's ordinance in my life was one of where, okay, I'm going to take you into law school, and you're
Right.
going to learn to think like a lawyer.
And you
So when
do.
you think like a
Yeah.
lawyer, like for instance, if I mentioned to you don't have any consideration, you might think that I'm without manners. But from a legal point of view, the contract isn't supported with your side of the deal. You don't have any skin in this game. You don't have any consideration, right?
Okay. Yep.
And so this is what I'm talking about when you start learning this to do lawyer speak. And there's also things in the law too that took me a long time to learn when I was in law school, but it's called a legal term of art. A
Okay.
legal term of art. And so when you have a term of art, it's usually a phrase like res judicata or collateral estoppel. These are
Yeah.
legal terms of art. And we see these legal terms of art in scripture very often. Like, for
Oh, yeah.
instance, Pa'al Avon is an example. Pa'al Avon, this is a worker of iniquity.
Right.
Pa'al Avon. And so you see that you get the legal term of, you get this legal phrase, not a legal phrase, but you get a term of art. And there
Okay.
are quite a few of these in the Hebrew, which allows me to understand this. You also see the use of euphemisms in the Hebrew. Like, for instance, Adam is a phrase used to describe mankind, both male and female, but it's also
True.
the name of the first man.
Sure.
So we see, the Ben Adam, the son of Adam, or the son of mankind, Ben Adam, as
Yep.
compared to Adam himself, or maybe you're talking about Cain, the Ben Adam, the son of Adam, right?
Sure.
And so, anyway, to understand euphemisms, to understand these terms of art, it becomes much more revelatory in terms of understanding the Torah. Now, it's the
Yeah.
same thing in understanding the Torah because David in Psalm 119, verse 1, he talks
Mhm.
about understanding the precepts
Sure.
of Yah. Now,
Yes.
so if you take a look at the precept governing the mitzvot, the
Yeah.
mitzvot that says if you kill a man intentionally, then so that man must be killed, right? If you take a life, then that life must be taken. All right. So you could look at that and say, all right, well, that means the death penalty. But from a lawyer's point of view, we look at that and we see three elements. One, he's the proximate cause of this person's death. Two, he intended to do that.
Okay.
Three, the guy died, right? So you
Okay.
have what we in the law would say you have the actus reus, you have the
Yes.
mala in se, the evil intent, evil
Yep.
state of mind, and then ultimately you have the corpus delicti. So the three elements, the three precepts of the crime. So when I was working as an attorney, I had the opportunity. I mean, I shouldn't say the opportunity. Um, one of the last cases I did, one of my clients had been accused of five major felonies, including murder,
Ooh.
including trespass, including first degree assault, and some other
Oh.
things. And it was an extremely complex case.
Right.
And most of the time, in most criminal cases, you deal with somebody and usually they're guilty.
Right.
But in this particular case, my client was not guilty.
Okay.
And and here's where you get into some really difficult issues. You know, if somebody comes up, let's say you see a confrontation between two people, and
Yep.
now it's violent. When
Okay.
it turns violent, one question that has to be asked is who started it,
Right.
right? Who started it? Because
Yep.
it's one thing for me to get in your face and say, "That's it, Joel. I'm not going to take it
Yep.
anymore."
Yep.
You get the nose to nose thing going, right?
Yep.
And then
Yep.
one guy goes, "Okay, you're too close." Whap, and he does a slap, or he
Okay.
does a. Okay, well, that's the initiation of force. That's the initiation of the assault. Now you have a question that arises about self-defense, right? Self-defense immediately arises at that point. But when you're dealing with self-defense, you're dealing with some very complex issues in terms of what you can prove and what you can't prove.
Okay.
And more importantly, when you get to prove it. And so at any rate, in this particular case, my client was not guilty, although someone died.
Okay.
And the question was how to be able to establish that and to be able to prove it in a courtroom that oftentimes does not allow evidence or that may have a jury slant or the jury may want to convict. And so, anyway, we were able to sustain the case. We actually won the case. It was a long fought case, went on for 3.5 years, I think. Yeah, 3.5 years. And we finally prevailed on the case. And then it went up on appeal, and we prevailed on appeal. And so you can rest assured, Joel, that my client is very happy that he's not dying in prison right now
Oh yeah.
on something that he didn't do, for something that he didn't do. And so for me, this was something that Yah had placed on me to say this. In fact, I knew I was going to do this case in Eastern Washington before
Okay.
I ever went to law school.
Wow.
Now, how I knew that, I don't know, but I did.
Okay.
And so at any rate, but nonetheless, Yah was teaching me this entire time how to read the Torah.
Yep.
He was teaching me how to understand the nuances of Scripture. He was also teaching me to do an in-depth dive into the reading. When you read a case, you're reading a case. Well, what's the holding there? You can't just look at a case and go, gee, there's the black letter law. Let's call it a day and move on.
Right.
You need to see the underlying reasoning that went into it. Sometimes you need to see the dissenting opinion. Sometimes you need to see the concurring opinion in order
Okay.
to actually get a very good handle on what's going on. Now, my children know this about me is that, I became a civil rights lawyer. And
Oh.
yeah, I was actually a civil rights proponent long before I ever went into law. In fact, it was civil rights that caused me to go into law to begin with. It was a
Okay.
question of an election that was misconstrued. The election, well, this was in Alaska. And the
Okay.
election priority up here was going to select candidates for the ballot based upon who won the primary, if you were a Democrat or if you were a Republican. But in
Okay.
Alaska, the Democrats and the Republicans combined equaled less than 50% of the registered voters. Most
Oh,
voters were independent.
okay.
And so we went in front of a judge, and I told the judge, I said, look, Your Honor, you have a primary election scheme here that creates impermissible barriers to First Amendment expression because it does not accommodate the vast majority of Alaskan voters at all. Therefore, it is an unlawful primary election scheme. And I quoted from Yickwo v. Hopkins all the way on up to Anderson versus Celebrezzi. And the judge agreed with me and struck down the primary election, which was sustained, by the way, by the Supreme Court.
Wow. Okay.
And
Cool.
so when we talk about these things, Joel, these things become they were important to me. First Amendment expression, to be able to speak freely in the public square, to be
Yes.
free from unlawful searches and seizures.
Sure.
How about to be assured due process, whether you're in an administrative procedure or a criminal procedure or a
Sure.
civil procedure, you have a right to due process, right? How about the
Yep.
right to a jury trial, the right to counsel? How
Yeah.
about inordinate or unusual punishment? It amazes me how the United States Supreme Court can say, we're going to take a person, put them in this wooden chair, put electrodes around their ankles, around their wrist, and put a cap on their head, and then hit them with voltage until their body blows up. And that's not cruel and unusual punishment?
That's cruel. That's unusual.
I think it is. No,
Yeah.
recently, Idaho just adopted the firing squad as part of the death
Mm,
penalty. Okay,
yeah.
but Joel, the firing squad is nothing more than stoning with
Yeah.
rapidly accelerated stones. You know what I mean?
Yes. Technically, you're right.
I mean, not to belittle the process, but I mean,
Mm.
the scripture says, okay, if you're going to do it, you hang them or you stone them. And when you think about it,
Mostly stoning, a little bit of hanging. Yes. Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, oh no. There's two times when you burn people in the Torah, which is amazing in Leviticus like 20 and 21. So there are two times, but that's very rare.
yeah, right. And of course, so you see this kind of thing now, so the point being is that somebody had to stand for these things.
Right.
I mean, like I can tell you, one of my clients, I don't want to get too far into it because I don't want to,
Right.
breach anything that's not in the public record.
Right.
But one of my clients was the son of a gentleman who had escaped both Auschwitz and Sobibor. And he was living a life that was trying to live the life of a free man and was subject to constant persecution.
Hmm.
And there was an occasion where he was really discriminated against and persecuted for nothing more than trying to save his own life. He was running from somebody trying to kill him after midnight, and he knocked on somebody's door and said, "Can you please help me?" and called the police. And
Yeah.
the police arrested him for disturbing the peace.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean,
Yeah.
these are the kinds of things that I was doing now. But in these kinds of cases, but in all of this, Yah's preparation for me was into the scriptures. And so I started working as a missionary actually in 2002.
Oh, okay. I didn't know
And
that.
yeah, I was doing mission work in Russia, and I
Okay.
was also doing mission work in the nation of Georgia. They call it
Oh,
Galizia.
beautiful area. Yeah.
And then I went into Greece, and in these areas, we were doing work with, I mean, you go to meet people, and you go to see, okay, what's happening. Like for instance, in Georgia, we went to come alongside a pastor who was uh, badly discriminated against. I mean, he
Okay.
was being persecuted by the Georgian Orthodox Church. And there
Okay.
was literally a video of him being beaten, kicked, smashed in the head with a cell phone by a guy who called himself Rambo.
Wow.
And Zali, I talked to Zali, and well, first of all, I talked to the Ruach Hakodesh, who said, "You're going to Georgia." And I thought, well, why would I go to Georgia? I don't want to go I don't know anybody in Georgia. I'm not Georgian, never been there, never had any interest. But it was on me, just like, it was the push from behind, right? This
Sure.
push from behind. And I said, okay, well, I'm going to go then. And so I went, and we took a team with us, and we found out that we were coming alongside this persecuted pastor.
Okay.
and he was unable to meet in his church. I mean, literally, there were videos of his church being raided, and they pulled his Bibles out and burned his Bibles in a fire in front of the church. And so we came alongside him, and we saw witnessed a series of miracles. I mean, very serious stuff, and it was crazy how it happened. But I don't want to get too far into the details, but I
Okay.
came back to Georgia for 4 years to visit Zali Takeshvili, and also to visit my friend Gennady Romanadze in
Okay.
Batumi. And literally, we went throughout the entire country and did, in fact, establish religious freedom on behalf of some of the churches that were non-Orthodox churches, namely the
Oh,
Pentecostal Union, the Baptist Church, and the Evangelical churches.
okay.
Zali's church was the first church to be registered in Georgia, uh, a non-Orthodox church to be registered in Georgia since the creation of the Soviet Union, as
Wow.
which as was a direct and proximate result of our being there. Now, my being a lawyer had a lot to do with it because I sat down with the Attorney General. What they didn't call him the Attorney General, but it was the Attorney General of Georgia. I had two different meetings with him, and and if you don't mind, Joel, I got to tell you a
Yeah.
little bit about
Yeah.
this story.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when I first went to meet him, Zali took me in there, and we go into this room, and we sat down at this big round table, and I looked around, and I went, okay, this looks like a typical Soviet room that's got 25 microphones in the walls, right? My initial thought, right?
Yes. Yes.
And then Zali says, okay, well, we have a couple of visitors in addition to the public defender, they call him, but he was actually the attorney general. In
Okay.
addition to the attorney general, we also have these two visitors, and in come these two Georgian Orthodox monks.
Oh,
And I
okay.
was like, okay, all right. Well, this is interesting. So they sat down. So there were the public defender, these Georgian Orthodox monks, my interpreter, Zali. And so I leaned over and I said, okay, I'm here to talk to you about human rights. But I'm
Oh,
not here to talk to you about human rights as enshrined in the United States Bill of Rights or human rights that you might find in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. I'm here to talk to you about the human rights that are enshrined in the Ten Commandments.
excellent.
And okay, so my interpreter's trying to translate, and I didn't know it, but well, one of the guys who was the head of juridical issues for he was the number two man of the Georgian
Okay.
Orthodox Church, and he was
Uh-huh.
an archbishop in the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, spoke
Okay.
5 languages fluently, was often published in Western Europe in English, and the other fellow was the head of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church in London for 8 years. Both of them were perfectly fluent in English, but my
Oh,
translator was kind of stumbling around here trying to get my stuff. They understood every word I said. And anyway, so as time went on, we had this power outage. And so the power outage goes on and all the computers die. And pretty soon, the sun starts to set and it gets darker and darker and darker. And pretty
yeah.
soon we're sitting in a pitch black room talking,
Yeah.
pitch black
Okay.
talking. And so we had this long discussion about the necessity of human rights. Well, Bishop Kobakidze, who was this archbishop, he published about 4 months later, and he said, "Look, it is a responsible thing." He says, even though lawfully Georgia can be a theocracy that is specifically an Orthodox theocracy and only Orthodox, it is also rightful under European law to be a multitudinous or a more open organization, to more open state to allow other faiths to practice.
Okay.
Now, Georgia
Yeah.
had a real responsibility to do this because they have an extremely significant Muslim community. They have a Muslim community in North
Yeah.
Ossetia and in
Yeah, they do.
Abkhazia.
Yeah.
And even my friend Gennady, who was a former Muslim turned Christian pastor,
Wow.
Gennady, man, what a great guy, you
Okay.
know.
Yeah.
But anyway, but so the responsibility of the church was, the responsibility of the state was to say, okay, we may be theocratically orthodox, but we
Right.
do have room for legal tolerance for other practices of the faith. And so
Okay.
as a result of that, uh, Zali Takeshvili's church was then legalized, registered. And so the
Wow.
persecution came to an end. So, so this is the kind of thing that, okay, well, I mean, Yah gifted me for that particular time, for such a time as this,
Right.
you know. And so that's what happened. And so anyway, these kinds of things happen. And then eventually I came back to the States and began doing Bible studies.
Yeah.
As we did the Bible studies, as we used to say, we started doing those Bible studies where you open up that section of the Bible where the gold leaf is still stuck together.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you remember that section,
Oh yeah.
So, so we started reading the things that had not been read before. And the Bible study was so exciting. I mean, it was the greatest night of the week.
Sure.
And we'd meet at Thursday and we get there at 6:30. We'd be there till midnight. And
Sure.
eventually the thing blew up to about 140 people, 150 people.
Okay.
And so this is when we started printing the books. We printed 8 different editions of what would become the Sefer. And we
Oh.
print
Okay.
4 at a time, or we print 8 at a time, or
Sure.
we, a couple here, a couple there, and
Yeah.
then we give them out to everybody in the group, as time went along. Well, the last printing we did, it was actually I printed 10 copies of this thing called the Kodesh Sepharim, is
Okay.
what it was. And it was 8 by 8.5 by 11, regular sheets of paper glued together, horrible binding, ugly binding. The book was absolutely miserable.
Sure.
It broke apart on the third reading.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. And so one of the books had the cover upside down.
Eh,
So I called the guy in downtown Seattle. I said, "Hey, this cover's upside down. Do you think you can, put a leather cover on it because I want to give it to my nephew?"
yeah.
Yeah, I can do that. Bring it down here. So I brought it down there, and he looks at the book and he calls me up 2 days later and he goes, "Who bound this thing?
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
is just horrible." So
Yeah.
anyway, he put it together. He put this leather cover on it, but it was like
Nice.
$300 for this leather cover,
Oh
right?
my. Okay.
And so I'm thinking, okay, well, that's not going to be very effective. And so it was about that time we made our third trip into Israel. And part of the reasons we were going into Israel was to get a handle on the actual usage of Hebrew, and particularly in terms of how you pronounce the name. That was a critical issue, how you pronounce the name, the Yod He Vav He.
Right.
And so we were looking around. I wanted to see because Jerusalem is a very interesting take on the Hebrew.
Oh
When
yeah.
people,
Well, they don't say it.
yeah,
The rabbis don't say the name.
nonetheless, but there's evidence everywhere. Like I'll give you an
Oh yeah.
example.
Oh, yeah.
We had to go up Isaiah Street to Jeremiah Street to Ezekiel Street to get up to House 57. Well, there's no Jeremiah or Isaiah on the street sign. You have Arabic, you have Hebrew, and then you have English, and the English is transliterated Hebrew.
Right.
So what we saw was Yeshayahu Street,
Right.
followed by Yirmeyahu
Jeremiah.
Street, followed by Yekeskel.
Yeah.
So we're looking at this going, all right, well, what is this? What is this? And so we spent some time looking at this and going through the research to get an idea of how this was being spelled in Hebrew, how this was being translated. Then, this was really the fun part. I had a favorite place in Jerusalem. It's called Ein Kerem. I don't know if you're familiar with this
No.
section.
No.
Well, Ein Kerem is like a green spot. It's a green
Okay.
spot. And so I didn't know what it was. So I told Brad, I said, "Hey, let's go down to Ein Kerem."
Okay.
Okay, let's do it. So we go down there and we find this beautiful, rooftop restaurant, and it's green and it's plush and it's like, and there's all these churches, these 2 Russian Orthodox churches over here and this big church over
Sure.
here. I'm looking at these churches, go look at all these churches in this place. This is really cool. So the following year we go back, and this time we're with the whole team. And
Yep.
David says, he says, "Well, before we leave Jerusalem, where do you want to do? We got a day to kick around. What do you want to do?" I said, "Well, let's go down to Ein Kerem, of course." So we go down to Ein Kerem, and there's a French convent down there. And that French convent has got 20-foot walls, steel gates, the whole thing. But it surrounds, I think it's 5 acres. And so when you
Okay.
go in there, they have this, beautiful garden over here on one side. They've got this pomegranate grove over here. They've got
Yeah.
a kind of a hostel. You can stay there. You can rent
Okay.
rooms there. They had a
Okay.
very simple chapel, and then off the backside they had a huge olive garden. Right. So I'm
Cool.
thinking this place is really beautiful, really nice. And then we're taking pictures of the 2 Orthodox cathedrals up on the hill behind it. So finally, I'm asking people, what is going on here? That there's a Greek convent, a Greek monastery, a French convent, a Russian
Yeah.
monastery, 2 Russian churches. What's going on here?
Yeah.
Oh, this is the birthplace of John the Baptist. Didn't you know that?
Oh.
Oh, I went, No, I didn't know that. We'll go up to that church and go check it out. So we
Okay.
went up into the church, and as we went up into the church, you walk in there, and the passage that announced the birth of John the Baptist out of Luke
Yeah.
is in 55 languages on 55 4x8 marble plaques around the courtyard. Bup, 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 bup. So I'm
Okay.
over there reading the Russian, I'm over there reading the Italian. Well,
Yeah.
anyway, we come on the Hebrew version of Luke.
Yeah.
We come on the
Oh,
Hebrew.
oh, cool. Okay. The Hebrew version of Luke. Yeah.
Hebrew version of Luke. And it's like, hey, look at this. And so Brad's over there. You see that Aleph Tav right there? You see that Aleph Tav right there? You see that Aleph Tav right there? I
Yeah.
said, yes, I do. So the language was accommodating, of course, the Aleph Tav, the word eight, which designates the direct object of the sentence, right?
Sure. Yes.
So when we saw that, we realized, okay, well, we're going to incorporate the Aleph Tav, then include the Aleph Tav throughout the text, Old
Hmm.
Testament through New Testament, right? We're going
Yep.
to include the Aleph Tav. And so this was the kind of inspiration that happened in 2012. And so then it was then at that Sukkot, we agreed as four families to form separate publishing group and actually get the book really printed, not
Yes.
fake printed with these horrible covers, just a
Yeah.
disaster. We're going to get the real book printed. We're going to get it Smythe sewn. We're going to have a real printer do it. And so we printed the first copy of the Sefer, which was, it was 3 inches thick.
Sure.
It was
Yeah.
huge.
Oh, yeah. This one is huge too. I mean, this is a heavy book. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, well, guess what? They can't print that 3-inch book anymore.
Oh,
It can't be done. The binder is gone and all that. We couldn't do that book again if we tried.
okay.
And so anyway, so these things have all, this is all the generation that's gone into Sefer Millennium Edition, And but so Yah was telling me, look, you're going to be doing this. You're not going to be doing the law.
Okay.
I want you
Okay.
to move out of this and I want you to move into this. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll get there. I'll get there. I'll get there. Well, Yah helped me right along. And so it turned out to be a very, very good thing because the kind of climate that you mentioned in the pandemic, the kinds of
Right.
things that
Yeah.
your fellowship went through,
Yeah.
and our fellowship didn't go through that because we had a bunch of rebels, and I mean literally
Oh,
a bunch of rebels. So we
good.
just refused to close. I mean, nobody knew where we were because we were meeting in an old garage, and so it was a very unique place full of a bunch of rebels anyway. But we met and we continued to meet through the pandemic. And
Yep.
then, of course, something came up where my wife's mother was very, very ill, and we were asked to come up and take care of her. So we came up to Alaska to take care of her. And the next thing that we stayed. So here we be. And we've been here for 5 years now. And, you know, I grew up here. So this is not something new to me.
It would be frightening for me because I love the sun and it gets dark up there for long periods of time. And you're fine with that emotionally and vitamin D wise, things like that. You're okay with that and your family too, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, look, it's not only dark, Joel, it's also cold, right? With a wind.
I'm from Minnesota. I can handle wind and cold,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
but dark. It's like
But the dark, yeah, the dark is
God
this.
said, "Let there be light." No, not up in Alaska. No, they don't get that. And then
I mean, like,
sometimes you have 24 hours of light. I mean, it's just you're the Arctic Circle,
yeah, yeah. Well,
but you're fine with
here
that.
right now we are getting a little bit of night. We do get night now, but
Okay.
night comes in about 11:30, and it kicks in until
Okay.
about 2, and then
Okay.
for the rest of the time it's light. But during the winter, the sun comes up at 10:30 and sets at 3. And so, if you're going to get a suntan, you got to get right out there at noon.
Oh my. I need my vitamin D. I need to be happy. That's part of the mood control from the sun. Plus, the sun's just healthy anyway.
Oh yeah.
So if you
Well,
can get enough,
we're not beyond doing 20,000 IUs of vitamin D a
oh,
day.
you do. Okay. All right. Okay.
Oh yeah, yeah,
I'm looking at my vitamin D right now, thinking, oh, I would need that desperately up there.
yeah. Oh yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. But no, we're at a point now where there's so many things to do. We have so many family and so many friends,
Yep.
and it's we're seeing them, and so we get used to the protocol, the winter protocol. The only thing I'm not used to is the wind, but the
Oh
cold,
yeah.
no problem. I mean, I got some fur and some stuff that will keep me warm down to 45 below
Right.
with no problem, right? So,
Yep.
and but I do prefer the sun, but I mean, I shouldn't say I prefer the sun. I like the sun. I like to be able to lay on a beach and do nothing for
Yeah.
a week, just
Love
sit
it.
there and bake, right?
Right.
And we don't often get to do that up here, but so we have to travel to do that, which we do
Okay.
from time to time. Yeah.
And you do travel. Okay. When did you flip over to Sabbath? What year was that?
2010,
That's real
2010.
close to me. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I was
Yeah.
flipping in 2008, but then definitely by 2010.
Yeah. 2008, we began that journey into the Sabbath and feast
Yeah.
keeping.
Yep.
Peacekeeping, we were very ignorant about what to do with the
But you
feast.
kind of flipped back and forth for a while there, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, we started doing Pesach. And
Yep.
once we started doing Pesach, it was Pesach. We've had Pesach every year since 2010. We've
Okay.
never been
Yep.
Pesach.
That's the
And
gateway drug, Pesach.
yeah,
It is.
yeah,
It
yeah,
is.
yeah. But Pesach was always very, very important. And we had some very beautiful. No, I think we began Pesach. That must have been, was it 2008? It was right in that range, 2008, 2000. We started having our first Pesach was, I think, 30 people. The next one
Okay.
was 60. The next one was 90. The next one was
Wow.
120. And then it
Wow.
started breaking out, and we had fewer and fewer people. We had a
Oh,
we had a Pesach one year that was absolutely. What year was that? I don't know. I get 2012 maybe.
okay.
Yeah. Anyway, we had a huge Pesach. It was absolutely wonderful.
Right.
And so anyway, yeah, and so feast keeper, yes. Sabbath keeper, yes. You can call me a sacred namer if you want.
Leviticus 23, I mean, it's right there. You might as well do what it says.
Yeah,
And,
yeah,
and,
they
and
belong. Yeah,
well, you're an attorney, so you understand the law of, either man's law or God's law, but you understand that God wants men to be involved with the law. And part of it is just reading Leviticus 23 and saying, oh my, this applies to me. These are laws forever. Hukolam, we'll call them, things like that.
yeah. There you go, hokolam. Yeah, and
Yep.
when you talk about the hokolam, like for instance, does anybody disagree with Leviticus 18 that you shouldn't marry your mom, or you
Yeah,
should?
exactly. I love to go there first. Yes.
Right? I mean, no, most people don't disagree with that, right?
Right. Yeah.
And it's the same thing. I've taught the Torah in an extensive session work
Right.
where to teach it preceptually, because the Torah, Moshe's Torah, like Jean Baudin in his 6 essays on the Commonwealth, he went into looking at the question, okay, is the law in Europe based on Greek authority like Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, or is it based on Roman authority like Justinian? And his ultimate conclusion, it's based on Moshe.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's based
Okay.
on Moshe and the Torah. And so
Okay.
when you look, like when I mentioned to you the 3 elements of the law concerning
Yep.
intentional murder, well,
Yes.
you have criminal law and criminal remedies. You have civil law and civil remedies. You have contract law and contract remedies. You have the
Okay.
law of bailments. You have the law of marriage. You have the law of divorce. You have the law of dowry. You have the law of inheritance. You have the law regarding next of kin in marriages, right? All of these
Yeah.
things, these specific areas of law, the law of bailments, these specific areas of the law are explained in the Torah. Like, I'll give you an example.
Yep.
Abraham, when he purchased Marat Machpelah, right? When he bought the
Yep.
cave, Marat Machpelah, he said to them, no, look, you're not going to give me that grave. I'm going to give you silver, which we in the legal business would call consideration, and you're going to give me a written deed.
Yes.
Now, it's from that tenet that we see that in real property, all real property transactions must be in writing. That's where
And
that
witnessed. And witnessed too. Yep.
and witness, yeah. And so this is where
Yes.
this all comes from. And
Yes.
by the testimony of 2 or more witnesses, the thing can be established. However, look at the difficulty that came up with Jezebel and Ahav when he comes home. Oh, I went to visit what's his name, and he's got a great vineyard, and I really want that vineyard. The lusting after somebody's vineyard, always a big mistake,
Oh,
by the
yeah.
way.
Always.
He wants that vineyard. So she says, well, why didn't you get it? Well, because he inherited it and he can't sell it because of the law of kindred. Oh, well, don't sweat it. I'll get the vineyard for you. So she talks 2 guys into bearing false witness. We heard him
Exactly.
blaspheme. Yeah. Therefore, take him out and kill him. And they did. And Ahab
They
then
did.
buys the vineyard, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
what do we see by that? Yeah, by the testimony of two or more witnesses, the matter is established, but they need to be telling the truth. So when it comes to the point where you read the book of Susanna, which is attached to the book of Daniel,
Bell and the
you
Dragon, Susanna. Yes. Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
and the dragon, right? And Susanna comes up, two guys, they want to sleep with her. She says, "Forget it, I'm married. Get out of here." Well, then
Hmm.
we're going to accuse you of being an adulteress and having that we saw you having an affair with some guy in your backyard. And they do. And they're ready to stone her. So in comes Daniel, the defense attorney, and says, "Just wait just a minute here. I want to cross-examine these two guys."
Right.
Right? And
Yep.
so he says, "Okay, you come over here." And the rule for cross-examination is that when one witness testifies, the other guy can't be in the courtroom. He has to be out of the courtroom.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Oh, yeah,
Cool.
yeah. If you're a
Okay.
witness in any kind of a trial, civil or criminal trial, you cannot enter the courtroom until you're going to give your testimony. You cannot hear the testimony of other witnesses. So
Wonderful.
anyway, so Daniel takes these two guys aside and says, "Hey, you said you saw her having an affair with this guy. Under which tree did it happen?" "Oh, it happened under the elm tree." "Okay, you've testified. Get out of here." Next guy calls him over. "Okay, you said you saw her having an affair with this guy under a tree. Which tree was it?" "Oh, it was the maple tree." "Okay, thank you." And he proves to them that his testimony was inconsistent with the other and that both of them were lying. And as a consequence, they got the sanction that they intended for Susanna, which she was to be stoned to death. And because they had borne false witness, they were stoned to death. So you see an example of really the first defense attorney in scripture turns out to be Daniel. Interesting, eh?
Cool, cool. So the main point for me is I love Torah because it is a lot like law. I mean, it's the basis of the law. Whether you want to call it English common law for America or whatever else. I'm glad that you cited Torah for the English common law. But for me, it's kind of exciting to be discussing the core of why we have law, why we have social systems that work in the Torah, and why we have other, relationships and other things like that work out, or when you go to war for that matter. Torah is the basis for everything, the foundation. And, Paul is interesting, but Paul doesn't tell you what the basis is. He tells you the arguments, so to speak. And I love Paul, but I'd rather go back to the source, Moses, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, they asked this messianic guy, "What is
Yeah.
the favorite electric guitar of messianics?" Answer: Les Paul. Right?
Les
Les
Paul.
Paul.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah. There
But
you go.
when you talk about Paul, it's very interesting because we were talking about this. I've been talking about this recently with some of the people in my group.
Yeah.
And when you talk about this idea of the word hupa, okay, so
Okay.
when we talk about Paul, he says, okay, so if you are guided by the Spirit, you are not under the law. This is in Galatians 5.
Yes.
If you are led by the Spirit, then you are not under the law. But this word hupa does not necessarily mean under. It can mean that, but it doesn't necessarily mean that.
Right.
And so it can also mean from, through, or by. So
Sure.
when you see this idea of if you are led by the Spirit, then you are not led by the law. That's different than saying I'm not under the law. Now,
Okay.
in addition to that, when you talk about under the law, you're talking about this idea of think about this if the phrase had been more completed, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you were not born under the law. What he's trying to tell these heathens that are coming to understanding the scripture is how do you know about the Shabbat? It's not in your bone marrow, it's not in your
Right.
customs, it's
Yep.
not in your practices
Yep.
because you
Yep.
weren't born under the law. You were born under paganism, you were born under heathenism,
Sure.
you were born as a heathen. You were sacrificing to Baal, you were having fertility rites in the spring, you were having, solstice festivals. You were worshiping
Sure.
on May Day. These kinds of things. What do you know about Shabbat? What do you know about the feast? It's not in your rhythm. It's not in your culture. It's not in your lifestyle because you were not born under the law. And so I think this is another way of understanding it. But when people say, okay, well, look, we're not under the law. I love people who tell me, look, I'm a Christian. I'm not under the law.
Right.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, then let's use that in common application today. When the trooper pulls you over for doing 75 and a 50, look him right in
Yep.
the eye and say, listen, officer, I'm not under the law.
Right.
And he's going to say, no, you're under arrest. Right. Or
Right.
you can try this argument. Look, officer, I'll grant you I was doing 75 and a 50. But yesterday, my dad drove this highway and did 50, so the law was fulfilled. Does,
Okay.
does that make sense to anybody? No, it doesn't make sense. And so what you see when people say these kinds of things, they're taught these things and they say, well, I'm not under the law. Well, guess what? As a lawyer, I can tell you, you most assuredly are under the law.
Oh yeah.
You're just not under Yah's law. You've rejected that and said, I'm going to get under our law. We can do a better job than what Yah did. Well, let me just share how much law you're under, okay?
Yeah.
If we take the common law, that is to say judicial decisions,
Yep.
from the 11 circuits and the Supreme Court, we're not going to talk about any state reporters, just those reporters. Each one of those reporters has 150 volumes. They're all 3 inches thick, okay?
Yep.
And there's 11 of them. Okay, so you're talking about 1,800 volumes that are 3 inches thick, plus all of the Supreme Court reports, which you have the Supreme Court, you have the lawyer's edition, and you have the U.S. edition. Okay,
Yep.
that's also 100. So that's another 450 books. So now we're talking 2,300 books. Okay, so you lay down on the ground. I'm going to put a plank over your chest, and I'm going to stack 2,300 3-inch books. Are you under the law yet? Wait a minute. I haven't added the state statutes.
Oh yeah.
County statutes, the civil code. I haven't added the tax code. I haven't added the code.
Oh, you're under. You're under.
You're so far under it'll push you 6 feet under the ground. Just wait a bit. You are under law. You're just not under Yah's law.
So, Stephen, if you were walking into court today and somebody had a charge against you, but this particular court had no codified laws whatsoever, why would you ask for grace? Why would Christians ask for grace if there's no codified laws? If they're not under anything codified whatsoever, why ask for grace? Why expect grace?
Yeah. Well, the grace of Yah is Yah knocking at your front door. I'm here, open, and I will come in and I will sup with you. This is the grace of Yah. It's not a license to sin.
Bingo.
Yeah. And so the thing is, when we talk about this, when we talk about, what is sin? Well, First John tells you, sin is transgressing the Torah.
Sure.
It's right in 1 John 5.
Right
What
there.
does Mashiach say? If you love me, obey my commandments.
Right.
Well, what are the commandments? Love Yah with all your heart, mind, and soul. Okay, all right. I'm there. Love your neighbors yourself. Okay, I'm there. Then what does John say? This is the love of Yah.
Yeah.
Obeying his commandments. And his commandments are not egregious. Mashiach said, my yoke is easy, my burden is light. Right? Yeah. And the yoke is easy and the burden is light. You don't necessarily have to be called to understand the precepts of Moshe's law. But you need to do what Yah told you to do when he spoke to Yasharel face to face. And one of those things he said was, guard my Shabbat.
Amongst other things, but that's a good start.
That's a good start, yeah. And I mean, when you look into it, I taught 67 hours on the 10 Commandments, Joel.
Okay. Never done that. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. And I love the 10 Commandments, but and we're going through that this week. I mean, Vayetchanan should be chapter 4, 5, and 6. And those are my favorites, probably of the whole Torah. But the point is, it's covenant and it's a relationship with God. But then chapter 6 starts the Shema. And so, but people don't understand. This is the heart of what God wants us to be in relationship with him over, And so, well, anyway, hey, the other thing is we're getting close to the hour here, and we haven't covered any of the stuff we promised the people to talk about.
We better hit the road then. Let's do it, Joel.
Let's go and give them a little bit of angels and demons, because you're brilliant, and I wanted to cite some of the interesting things that people want to know about, because people are asking about angels and demons and other things like that. So we have things like seraphim. How would you define a seraphim from the Bible?
Well, a seraphim, if you read Strong's will tell you it's a fiery serpent, and that's just flat wrong. Okay, that's wrong.
Okay.
We have 3 eyewitnesses to the seraphim. One is Isaiah, one is John in the book of Revelation, and the other is Ezekiel.
Yep.
And so all of them tell you although in Ezekiel it's a little more cryptic. But in
Okay.
Isaiah and in Chazon, you see that the seraphim are, as you have depicted here, you have two wings above, you have two wings with which they fly, and two wings below with which they cover themselves.
Sure.
And they have four different faces. They have the face of a bull, the face of a man, the face of a lion,
Sure.
and the face of an let's see what
Eagle.
lion
Eagle was it?
eagle,
Eagle.
and the face of an eagle. And so these seraphim are critically important. Now, I can tell you that the four seraphim that are discussed in Revelation are depicted in the four corners of the cupola in what is called the Red Mosque in Istanbul today, but was the
Oh,
most important
cool.
church in Christendom,
In
called
Moscow.
the Hagia Sophia
Oh,
in
the Hagia.
Istanbul. Yeah, Hagia Sophia in Istanbul. It's
Okay.
called the Red Mosque now. Those four seraphim are in the four corners. To this day, they're still painted in those four
The
corners.
Muslims left it up.
The
Wow.
Muslims have not taken that down. And these four seraphim are these guiding seraphim. They're very, very critically important persona. And
Okay.
they're not a creature you want to take on. Hey, look, you want to duke it out? No,
No.
you don't want to try to take on a seraphim.
No.
Big mistake if you ever try to do that. Now, the cherubim, I think the cherubim are actually only two winged. The cherubim are
Yeah, I
described.
think they are. There
They,
might be one application with six, but generally four.
generally, yeah. And so you see you see their wings folded down like this on
Yep.
top of the Ark of the Covenant, right?
Right.
And so the cherubim now, but I want to speak about this now. The Ophanim this is another very critical point. You showed them here the Ophanim, which we use the word Ophanim in Ezekiel. In other words, we
Yes.
don't say
Yes.
it, we actually use the word Ophanim.
Yes.
And this Ophanim does depict these as these rolling devices. Now, of course, when you talk about Yekeskel trying to give us this description of these Ophanim, he's trying to do the best he can, right? With
Right.
what
I know.
you know,
It's tough. Yeah.
and it's extremely tough. So he's having a hard time doing these kinds of things. So when we look at these idea of these angels, okay, first of
Yep.
all, the angel, the word for angel in Hebrew is malach,
Right.
malach, and so malach actually means messenger. Now you have
Right.
some very interesting plays on this because we see, for instance, Meleki Tzedek, which when you look at Meleki, when you look at the word in the Hebrew, you don't have these vowels. You have
Right.
MLK, Martin Luther King,
Yep.
Mem Lamed Kof, right?
Yep. Yep.
And with the Yod. So it could be Meleki or it could be Malaki.
Could
It could be
be.
one of the two, right? And so
Right.
on one hand, you have the book in Hebrews that says, this is not a righteous king, but a righteous messenger. Malachi Tzedek, a righteous messenger, as compared to
Okay.
Malachi Tzedek, a righteous king, our righteous king.
Sure.
Okay, and also then you have the word Molech,
Oh,
and
you're right.
Molech,
It's close. Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
so here you're talking about a dark force. You're
Right.
talking about a dark force. Okay, so these things. So the key to remember about in the Greek angelos
Oh,
is
I would go angelos, but that's the Greek, and so that's messenger also. Same thing as Hebrew.
also. So
Yeah.
no matter how you want to look at it, you've got a messenger, and the
Okay.
messengers are
Messenger.
described in the book of Hazon as being stars. The seven stars you see in my right hand are messengers. Okay,
Yep.
so the key to remember about these angels, and of course we have these archangels, the archangels, which
Right.
are described. There's seven of them described in the book of Hanok. Seven of them.
Okay. Yep.
These are
Okay.
the watchers that did not fall, and they are here to look at the watchers who did.
Okay.
And so, at any rate, this is where you see the names Michael, Gabriel, Uriel,
Yeah.
Sariel, Penuel, right?
Are they the leaders of the whole bunch
Of the righteous angels.
of the righteous angels? Yes.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, they
Okay,
are.
that's what I thought. Because, the reference in Daniel 10 is that Gabriel was saying, I'm fighting, I'm being delayed by 21 days, but Michael, he seems like he's the top guy for
Yeah.
angels.
Well, again, the book of Enoch discusses with you. It
Yep.
discusses in particular their particular tasks, if you will.
Yep.
So Enoch is really the best source. And just a quick word about Enoch.
Yeah.
Hanok, again, if Hanok was found with 11 copies were found in the Dead Sea Scrolls. There's Jude directly quotes from the book of Hanok. Second
Absolutely.
Peter references the book of Hanok. And
Absolutely.
there's absolutely, one bit of testimony after another in the New Testament
another.
concerning Hanok.
Yes.
It is a messianic book,
It
and it
is.
belongs to us. Just like the feast days belong to us,
Sure.
so does Hanok belong to us. And so keep that in mind in reading it. And so you will get a very good description of what their authority is and what they're
Yes.
expected to do and what they do accomplish. And so those are very important. Now, I want to get to something very quickly because I know we're kind of running out of time.
Well,
But
I mean, we're going to go on for a while, but the main thing is, yeah,
we
go
got
for it. Go for it. Yep.
So one of the things that we discovered. So I was at a conference with Stephen Benoon and L.A. Marzulli.
Yes.
And Stephen loves to get up there with the Hebrew English and teach, right?
Right.
And so at this particular time, he was teaching on the passage Numbers 13:33.
Oh, yeah, I love it. Yeah.
Yeah. So the passage of Anak, right? The sons of Anak.
Anakim, yes.
And so I told him, I said, just hold up a second here, Stephen. Let me show you something. When you look closely at this passage in the Hebrew, you see two different spellings for this word Nephilim that is being translated as giants or whatever.
Yeah.
One is Naphalim and the other is Nephilim.
You are correct. Yes.
And so in the Sefer, we do distinguish between the Naphalim and the Nephilim. So the Naphalim are the fallen, the Nephilim are the children of the Naphalim. And they're actually the second generation down. The first are called just simply giants. The Nephilim were also giants, but they were a second generation. And then the Eliud were the third generation.
I can't remember where, but there was some source that said one particular creature had 1/3 of a fallen angel in him. And so obviously he's got to be second generation.
Yeah. That's correct. And so when you see this now, the historical record is very clear whether you're dealing with Greek, Hebrew, Egyptian, or Hindu. They all have a story of the Titans. They all have stories of these giants.
Everybody does. Everybody.
Yeah, they all do. And now there have been a friend of mine was just sending me a discussion that he'd had with Michael Tellinger in South Africa concerning his discussion of the giants and some of the creatures that were there. And like he was talking about Adam's calendar, and they were referencing the fact that those stones at Adam's calendar may be the teeth of one of the giants.
Okay.
Right. And so they've seen other things that are these stones that are like, okay, here's this stone that's 6 feet tall that appears to be a heart. It's a fossil, but it has all of the droppings of a heart. And there's plenty of evidence that giants were on the earth, plenty of it. And so when we see this thing now, so it's very important for people to really kind of get a handle on this. Okay. So you have a description of the fallen watchers. These fallen watchers who came to earth. Now, one of the things is that in Hanok, it does specify that they had shape-shifting capability.
Oh, we're going to cover that. Yeah, please stick with that thought. We'll probably hit that stronger in a couple of slides from now. But yeah, they seem to shapeshift. It's there.
Okay. So
no doubt. For sure.
Angels cannot have sex because this is what the Gospels say. No, the Gospels say there's no marriage in heaven in a glorified body.
That's it.
Okay?
That's it.
But however, when we talk about this idea of Nephilim, and we talk about this idea of the Naphalim versus the Nephilim, and then you can see that the fallen one as compared to the child of the fallen one. And these are distinction because when we talk about the disembodied Ruachot of the Naphalim versus the disembodied Ruachot of the Nephilim, the disembodied Ruachot of the Nephilim are called devils. The disembodied Ruachot of the Nephilim are called demons.
Oh, good. So we agree on that one too. That's wonderful. So yes. So or Tameh Ruachot, something like that, where they are not tahor, they're not clean. They're of a horrible combination of human and angel or whatever. But the main thing is they're not clean. They're not ritually pure.
Let's get into it. Okay.
Yeah. Go.
Okay. All right. Okay. So first of all, we know that. Well, I'll get to that number in a second.
Yeah.
In Revelation, there is a discussion. And the discussion goes by hurriedly because we all want to look at the 12,000 from the tribe of so-and-so, 12,000 from the tribe of such and such.
Okay,
12,000 from the tribe of so-and-so, right?
Right.
But when you look closely at that passage, you're going to see that it begins with a different count, okay? So this is in
It
Revelation chapter
does?
7. Yeah. Now listen to this.
Okay, go.
It says, now I'm just going to we're going to put a period here where a
Yeah,
period doesn't
yeah,
exist.
yeah.
Okay. And I heard the number of those who were sealed, 144,000, period.
Okay.
Okay. I heard the number of those who were sealed, 144,000. Now, when you read the rest of the passage, it's 12,000 times 12. That comes to 144,000. Yet,
Sure.
look at this. Watson and Crick,
Yeah,
1953, they discovered the double helix DNA.
yeah.
And the double helix DNA, when you get into the 1990s, Watson and Crick also discover that there are 72,000 genes descending on one helix and 72,000 genes ascending on the other. Now, this
Okay.
particular publication was denied, repressed, and all kinds of people denying it through the year 2000, 2005,
Okay.
2008. But in
Yep.
2011, peer-reviewed reports started being published, numerous reports, that in fact that's true. 72,000 descending, 72,000 ascending. Now, you put those two together, that's 144,000. When
It
you
is.
think about what is seen there, this is what Jacob saw when he laid on his pillow. He saw the angels descending and the angels ascending along the double helix DNA. This is what he was seeing.
There is a word in Hebrew, sulom, like a ladder, but it's probably more like a helix, double helix, going up, going down. So
Yeah.
that's from Jacob. I think it's Genesis 28. So yeah.
There you go. There you go. Okay, so now we see this now. 144,000 is the number. They were sealed, and their number was 144,000.
Yeah.
So in one indication of this passage, he's telling you that the Ben Adam,
Yep.
the children of Adam, have this genetic code that's number is 144,000. Now let's compare that to what happens when in Genesis 6:4. There were Nephilim in the world in those days when the Beni Elohim came among the Benot Adam. It doesn't say, it does not, it denotes them as the Benot. So it's the children, but the feminine plural, Benot Adam.
Yes.
Okay. And to them were born warriors and tyrants, right?
Sure.
Mortal men from time out of mind. Okay. So when we see this now, we see that there was something that happened in the DNA. There was a difference in the DNA. Okay. So the DNA was modified. Now, when we talk about this modified DNA, this has been celebrated and was celebrated by Queen Elizabeth II, who had a ceremony at Windsor Palace showing a triple helix DNA.
Okay.
It was lit up at the palace, and she plugged it in, and it showed a triple helix. And interestingly enough, there were 72 lights on each strand of this triple helix DNA. Okay.
Weird. Okay.
When we take that triple helix DNA, 72,000 plus the replicated DNA, the messenger RNA, messenger, another name for angel, another name for Moloch, another name for Malak.
Okay.
Malak RNA.
Yep.
You take that and place it between the two, and you end up with 216,000 genes instead of 144,000 genes, which, interestingly enough, if you were to say, let's calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. Let's calculate that. That doesn't mean identify it. That means either add, multiply.
It's arithmos. Yeah, it's arithmos. Let's calculate it.
Arithmos. Let's calculate it. Okay, so when we calculate it, we take 6 times 60 times 600, and we get 216,000, the number of a triple helix DNA.
Oh, wow. Interesting. Okay, so of these particular angels mentioned here, which ones fell? A little bit from each, a couple from each, or is there more to be falling later on?
The answer is yes. There are more that have fallen since then. But when we look initially, here's something you got to keep in mind. The Nephilim are the ones that fell. Naphal. N-A-P-H-A-L. Nephilim. They're the ones that fell. The Nephilim are their children. The Eliud are their children. The giants are their children.
Yes.
Okay. Now, these Nephilim are still in the earth to this day.
Are they kind of hiding out? Are they, we'll come to the slide later on, but the Illuminati, are they kind of intermixed with them, so to speak?
Well, when you're talking about that, now, here's the thing. Genesis 6:4 says there were Nephilim in the earth in those days, and afterward.
And afterward.
And
Yep.
afterward.
Yep.
After what? After the deluge.
Sure. After the flood. Yeah.
After the deluge. Because
Right.
who are the sons of Anak in Numbers 13:33? Who's
Right.
Anak? Who are these giants?
Right.
And people who want to say, oh, giants, man, that is just a bunch of crazy Enoch readers talking about that stuff. Well, then
No.
who was Goliath and his brothers? Who was Og of Bashan?
Right. I mean, I'm reading Deuteronomy last week to my people, and I'm saying these are giants. The cities are literally built up into the heavens. But Ayer, they're literally this is big giants. These are real, and they're mentioned all the time. Og and Sihon and all these guys. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're talking about some of these boys were big.
Big.
I mean, not just a little bit big, 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 big.
Yep.
Beyond comprehension big. And so when we talk about these Nephilim, these Nephilim were the ones that fell. And this was led by Shemyatza. Now, when you read that in the Lawrence translation, he says Samiatza.
Right.
But remember that the Ethiopian was a transliteration from what they were hearing. The Ge'ez language was a transliteration. So you go back and you look, that is a Sheen Mem. Sheen Mem. So you could say Samiatza, you could, but you could also say Shemi-Atza, which means what? My name is Atza.
Name. Yeah. Yeah, you could say that.
Azazel, but after I fell, the L was removed. I became Shemi-Atza. My name is Atza.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
Right? Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So here you see him. He's the one that led the rebellion, and they were the ones that came down and said, we're going to do this thing. Well, they left their heavenly estate because they were seduced by what? The hair of women. This is what Paul talks about. In 1 Corinthians 11, he says, women, you have to cover your head because of the angels. What do you think he's talking about there?
He's talking about Enoch. Hanoch.
He's talking about Enoch. There's absolutely no question. He's talking about Enoch, that because your hair was out there looking good, you were seducing the angels. So put a cover on it.
Yeah.
That's what he's trying to say, And so when you look at this now, when you talk about these demons, here's what's so fascinating. People say, okay, so Enoch chapter 10 says that the demons are locked in the earth for 70 generations.
Right.
So Tom Horn looked at that and said, well, maybe that's 100 years, maybe that's 1,000 years, maybe that's 20 years, maybe that's 40 years. What's a generation? We don't know. We don't have to know. We can look in the book of Luke.
Okay.
We can look in the book of Luke. Okay, so the book of Luke is incredible in Luke chapter 3. Why is Luke chapter 3 so incredible? Because Luke chapter 3 is going to give you the genealogy from Mashiach all the way back to Adam.
Okay, yeah.
And give me that genealogy all the way back to Adam. What do we find? Well, let's count them. Let's start with Mashiach, and then Joseph, and then Eli, and then etc., going down on down. And when you start counting from Mashiach, when you get to number 70, you reach Enoch. Mashiach to Enoch, 70 generations. So what are the first miracles you see in the Gospels?
So you're not telling me how many years is a generation. You're just telling me these are 70 generations.
There's 70 generations. You can take it or leave it. There's 70 generations from Enoch to Mashiach.
Wow.
Now, when you see that now, look what happens. The first miracles that take place, whether it's Mark or in Matthew, it's the casting out of the demon of the blind man or the casting out of the demons of the blind men. Either way, the demons are cast out, and the people in the synagogue say, nothing like this has been seen in Yasharel before. Why not?
Only the Mashiach can heal blindness. Only the Mashiach.
But the point is the casting out of demons. The reason why casting out of demons had not been seen before is because the demons had not been let loose until Mashiach.
Oh, okay. All right. There are some oddities back with, say, Saul, the Witch of Endor, things like that, but that's not demonic. In fact, I would argue that was actually, why am I blanking on the prophet that popped up? Samuel.
Yep,
it was Samuel. I mean, in the text, it's pretty bold. It's Samuel.
Yeah, I think it is Samuel. And I agree with you on this, Joel, because when you hear people talk about this, oh, no, he was just speaking with a demon. No. Here's the thing. When you read 4 Ezra talks about that the dead, that the righteous, when the righteous die, they do what? They rest in peace.
They do.
where did this rest in peace idea came from? It came from fourth Ezra,
Sure.
because those of iniquity do not rest in peace. They walk the face of the earth with their consciousness ever sliding until the judgment day. But those, the righteous, sleep in a profound silence. So this is why necromancy is condemned in the Torah, because you are waking someone from a profound silence who is going to know nothing until they sit at the throne of Mashiach. From
Right.
the time they die
Bema, Bema
until
seat.
when the next memory is going to be at the throne of Mashiach. And
Yep.
so to wake Shemuel was a huge transgression.
Sure.
For Shaul to do that, it was a huge transgression. So I do believe it was Shemuel that he had wakened. So there may be some exceptions, but when we see that the testimony of Anak in Numbers 13,
Yep.
we have clearly a Nephilim Anak who has no father. There's no genealogy leading up to Anak. Just Anak appears, and then boom, here's his sons, the giants. Okay, so where did this guy come from, this Anak? Where did he come from? Well, there were fallen angels afterward. There were fallen watchers after.
Yes.
So even though a third of heaven fell, at least that's the summation from the book of Hazon,
Right.
there were only 200 that came to the earth, to transgress.
At first, so you're going with, some people call them egregores. These are the most powerful, and they've transgressed right away. So that's based on Enoch. Okay, sure.
That's right.
Yeah.
They transgressed right away. And
Yep.
they knew their transgression. And they went to Enoch and say, hey, go back to Yah and tell him we're sorry. We want to come home. And Yah says, nope,
No.
no. The
No.
answer to you is no. And the book of Giants, by the way, which is also found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, it's very cryptic.
Is the book of Giants in your book?
No, we did not include it. And the reason we didn't is because the fragment is so cryptic.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I was digging around looking for it. There's a guy down in Alabama that translated it, but there's not much to translate. Nice enough guy.
Yeah, it's like he filled in a lot of the blanks.
Okay.
But the key tenor of the book is that it's a book of lamentation, because the giants know that they have no salvation. They know that.
Say that one more time. There's no salvation for giants, right?
There's no salvation for giants.
Okay. And really for fallen angels too. It's lake of fire stuff.
Yeah, it's lake of fire for sure. And so what we see now, when we talk about this, now here's one of the big problems we see, Joel, is that there's all this discussion about aliens, UFOs, aliens.
Oh yeah. That's why we're going through this. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And people do not recognize that you're dealing with demons. You're dealing with demons, and you're dealing with these. When you talk about a disembodied ruach code, these demons are replete. There are, I don't know how many there are, hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands, a million, I don't know. But these demons were the children, the Nephilim, the Eliud, the giants. These were the children of these Nephilim. They were only trapped in the earth for 70 generations. They weathered the deluge.
Boy, you answered something huge for me. That makes so much sense, and everybody sits there and fights over what length is a generation, 20 years, 40 years, 50 years, 70 years. No. It's that time frame. That's what it is.
Yeah, it's that time frame, and it's given to us in Luke. Luke did some things that are so incredible. Like, for instance, in Luke, in that chapter 3, he mentioned somebody as the son of Shelach named Canaan. That doesn't appear in any of the 66 book Bible anywhere. That name does not appear. And so the commentators, well, we don't know who he's talking about, this Canaan guy. Forget it. Just ignore that passage. Forget Luke. He didn't know what he was talking about. Yeah, he did. He was quoting directly from the book of Jubilees, chapter 8. Okay. And Canaan was the one who discovered the writing of the watchers after the flood. He discovered the writings of the watchers and wrote it down, because they wrote the omens of the sun and the stars and the moon. Now, we see this now when you go to Göbekli Tepe in Turkey. You see the writing of the watchers writing out the omens of the stars and the sun and the moon and the wandering stars, right? The Astra Planetae, the wandering stars, the planets. And and they were using different cosmological tools back then. This is what's so keen about Göbekli Tepe, which was finally diagnosed, which is that, hey, these are symbols for constellations. They didn't have Orion and Virgo and Leo and this kind of stuff. They had birds that they were using to depict these constellations.
Okay.
See? And so this is why
Okay.
you can tell it came from time out of mind. It's an antediluvian record, a Göbekli
Sure.
Tepe.
Sure.
And
Interesting.
anyway, so this is why. So when we see this idea of the fallen watchers and these fallen demons, now these devils themselves are
Right.
going to be released when these four angels at the Euphrates are released. And we're here.
Okay, so you're Revelation chapter 9, the last half, the sixth trumpet, and you're saying, and you know what? Save that one a little bit because I'm going to ask you to kind of comment on the fifth trumpet, the sixth trumpet, and then Revelation 12, all kind of together. So let's jump on. Whoops, sorry. Here, let's go to this one, which is who are the Presbyterians up in heaven in chapters 4 and 5 of Revelation?
Well, there's R.C. Sproul and Spurgeon and John Wesley. No, I'm kidding. Now, I think the logical conclusion in this is that it's going to be the 12 sons of Yaakov
Okay,
and the
okay,
12 apostles.
okay.
That would be the likely summation. I'm not saying I know that is the case, but that would be the
Are
likely summation.
are they the divine council? You know, is this Deuteronomy 32? Is this Psalm 82? Is this the Elohim with, we'll call it a small e Elohim? Is that what we're dealing
Okay.
with here?
Okay. All right. Now, I'm glad that you asked this question
Okay, go for it.
because you and I wish I had a whiteboard that I could show you this, but
Okay.
you popped this question, and I'm gonna just kind of go through this because
Yep.
Elaim. This
Yeah.
is the word that we find. Aleph Lamed He Yod Mem.
Yeah.
There's no Vav. Aleph Lamed He Yod Mem. Okay, now with that spelling, we can rightly divide this word. And when we rightly divide this word, now you mentioned to me, Joel, and I just want to kind of
Yeah.
remind you of this.
Yeah.
You said, is it possible that the scripture begins with Aleph,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Now, that's a very good question because if you were numbering the scripture, yes, it would begin with Aleph. And so Aleph, Breshit bara Elohim
Yeah.
et Shemaim ve'et Haaretz, right?
Yep.
These
Yep.
7 words of creation.
Sure.
All right, but wait till I share this with you.
Yeah.
So Elohim, one question is, okay, is this a masculine plural that creates a group? Now, at first blush, that's what it looks like, a masculine plural that creates a group. And so there is a group of El. Well, when you go back and you divide the word, you say, okay, look, Aleph, Lamed. Aleph is the first, right? The authority,
Yep.
the primary, the principal, the first.
The bull, we could almost call it. You
Yeah.
know,
Or
the paleo, it looks like a bull.
yeah. And then you have the Lamed, which is the shepherd staff. So
Sure.
this is the symbol really of the Father and the Son, the
Sure.
Aleph and the Lamed. So you see El or El as standalone, El Shaddai, El Elyon,
Sure.
etc. You see this in very common, but then you oftentimes see it hooked up with other letters that all start with the He. Whether you're talking about Elohai, Eloheka, Elohekam, Eloheken, right?
Sure.
All
All
of
of that.
these
Yep.
extrapolations, they begin, the next letter is He. Well, the
Yep.
He is the breath, Ah.
Sure.
And the breath, Ah, is symbolic of the Ruach HaKodesh.
Okay.
Ah, the breath. Ruach itself means breath. Now, so what we see is this, that the breath, if you go to Isaiah 11:2, you will see that it says that the Ruach Yahweh was upon him. That's one. The Ruach
Yep.
Hokmah, the Ruach Bina, the Ruach
Yep.
Etza, the Ruach Gebarah, the Ruach Da'at, and
Yep.
the Ruach Yirah. These
Yep.
are 7 Ruachot that are upon
Spirits.
the stem of Jesse, right? The root.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
So these 7 Ruachot, now that is, if you talk about these Ruachot, they're plural. So you could say El, then Chaim. So the Chaim is what is plural, not
Okay.
the Aleph or the Lamed, but the Chaim
No.
is plural.
Yeah. Yeah. The
Okay.
life would be plural. Yes. Yes.
Now, in fact, you see this construct of Aleph Lamed He, that package alone, just those
Yep.
3 letters, those standalone, Aleph Lamed He, that appears in the book of Job, and it also appears in the book of Daniel, standalone, referring to what? The Father, the Son, and the Ruach HaKodesh in one word, which
Oh.
in Hebrew is Elah, but this is where we get the Arabic word Allah. And they say Yah has no son. Well, it looks like you're wrong.
Oh, he has
So
a son. Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, now that's one way of understanding it. Now let's rightly divide the word,
Okay.
because we have prefixes here in this passage. Like Aleph is a prefix, meaning I will be. Lamed is a prefix, meaning to. He is a
Yep.
prefix, meaning the. So when you look at the name Adam, for instance, Adam,
Yeah. Yeah.
Aleph, Dalet, Mem. Well, Dalet, Mem is a word. What word is it? Dam, that means what? Blood.
Blood. Yeah.
Okay, so now we have the Aleph in front of it. I will be blood. This is what
Yes.
this is what the name Adam means. This is Yah saying, I will be blood. See, this when he put the life into Adam, when he breathed the neshama, his
Yes.
name, into the nostrils of Adam, I will be blood. The man became a living, breathing creature, a living, breathing soul, nefesh haya.
Yes.
Okay, so you can see the Aleph, I will be. Now, let's take a look at this. Now, this leaves the Yod Mem. So if you were going to say Yom as in day, you would say Yod Vav Mem, right? Yom. But this is
Yeah.
not. This is Yod Mem. Is that a root word? And the answer is yes, it is. It is the word for sea. Sea. So when
Okay.
you talk about, for
Oh, you're
instance,
doing Yam and Yom. Okay.
yeah, Yam, sea,
Yep.
right? Versus
Yep.
Yom. So
Yep. Yep.
Yam,
Yep.
like for instance, the Yam Sof, the Sea of Reeds.
Sure.
Not Yam Adom, the Red Sea, but Yam Sof, the Sea of Reeds.
Right.
So here you see Yam. Now, so what do we see Elohim? Elohim is I will be to the sea. All right, now let's go back and construct this passage. Breshit bara. So we assume, remember, these are the first opening words of scripture upon which
Yeah.
all the foundation is going to be laid for the rest of the text in terms of how the Hebrew is construed. So, for instance,
Okay.
when you say Baruch or Barak, right? Baruch
Yep.
atah Yahweh Sebaot.
Yep.
Baruch, Barak, Baraku et Adonai Hamivarak.
Yep.
Barak comes from may the Creator be upon you. May the Creator be within you. Barak, right? So
Sure.
because it comes from the word bara. Well, we're told that bara is a verb, but what if it's a noun? Bara. What if
Oh,
it's a
I've
noun?
never thought of it as a noun. For me, it's a verb. So that's fine. Go for it. Tell me.
Let's take a look. In the beginning, a creator, I will be to the sea, to the heavens, and to the earth.
Sure.
Different.
Different.
Now, I'm not saying that's what it means, but that can be arrived at rightly dividing the word. I will be to the sea. So on one hand, we see Elohim as meaning the Father, Son, and the Ruachot
Okay.
in plural. And we know that there's evidence that the Ruachot does express itself plurally. We see it in Isaiah 11:2. We
Oh yeah.
also see it in Hanok.
Yeah.
There's another expression of it.
Oh yeah.
So when we talk about, so can you say, gee, there's 24 Ruachot,
Right.
24 forms of the Ruach HaKodesh that surround the throne. Is that possible?
Yes.
Sure it is. Sure it is. And what are these 24 Ruachot? Well, again, this goes to understanding Ruach HaKodesh, or in the Greek, Hagia Pneuma, or in the Latin, Spiritu Santo.
Oh,
Either
sure.
way, in all three, they mean the same thing, sacred breath. Sacred breath.
Interesting.
Now,
Okay.
so Ruach means breath, wind, violent exhalation. Pneuma,
Sure.
like a pneumatic tool, or like coming down with pneumonia.
Yep.
Pneuma. Pneuma means breath.
Sure.
Spiritu is the root word of respire,
Sure.
respiration. In the middle of respiration is the word spiro, because spiritu means breath. Spiritu Santo, sacred breath. Hagia Pneuma, sacred breath. Ruach HaKodesh, the sacred breath.
Interesting.
So when you see, now, when we talk about the breath of Yah, what are you talking about when you're talking about the breath of Yah? You're talking about something that created life as it breathed into the dust of Adam,
Sure.
right?
Yep.
He breathed into dust,
Yes.
and the man became a living soul.
Yes.
And so when we see this now, so we talk about the breath of Yah. What is the breath of Yah? It's the breath of life. It's the breath of knowledge. It's the breath of wisdom. It's the breath of counsel. It's the breath of strength. It's the breath of power. It's the breath of victory. It's the breath of glory. See, now these things are also described when you talk about Michael Heiser's divine counsel. You take
Yes.
a look at the prayer of David in First Chronicles chapter 29, verse 10, right?
Okay.
Baruch atah Yahweh Elohai Yasharel Avinu Madolam Ba'olam. Blessed are you, Yahweh, the Elohai of Yasharel, our Father forever and ever. Leka Yahweh, Hagevra, Hagedula, Hamemleka, Hatifara, Hanetzarach, Hahod. He's telling you, to you is the power, the strength, the glory, the majesty, the
Yes.
victory.
Yes.
Right? All of these things. So you have David laying out these various aspects, which are the contours of the name of the Ruach HaKodesh. So it's very possible that this divine counsel that Michael Heiser is referring to here is this counsel of the breath of Yah. It is the breath of Yah. And
Sure.
maybe it's made manifest in the 12 elders. Maybe that's manifest in the 12 apostles. I don't think so. All of those guys were sinners if you read the testimony of the
Right.
It's
It has to be something holy. And also, let's be honest, the 12 patriarchs are probably resting in the ground, so to speak. You know, you described how their nephesh just goes to the earth and sits there and basically sleeps until, whatever time.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I see where you're going. That's very intriguing. I like it. Okay, so help me with this. We've got angels, we've got fallen angels, we've got created beings, we've got all sorts of celestial type beings. But in this case, these are the big words from Ephesians 6:12. Archos or archons, possibly, exousios, authorities or bearers of ruling authority, cosmocratorus, world leaders, pneumatica, tes honorius, entoi, eponorios. Okay, so spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. Do you have any comments about why demons are not mentioned in this particular section? Sorry about the chainsaw going on outside of my room, but basically, hopefully you can't hear it. But the main thing is, demons are not mentioned, but these guys are mentioned. Who are these guys, and why aren't demons mentioned?
Well, I'm not sure that these are not mentioned, although the word in Greek is daemon,
right?
Daemon. So
right.
It's not that the word doesn't appear. And, the word diabolos also appears in the Greek too.
Right.
And so when we talk about these, we're talking about when Paul is talking about these principalities. So we start out with these idea of these, these archas.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
So this is, described as principalities or principles, right?
Right.
And so this is, even though we see this as kind of a chief, I think this is a little bit more esoteric than that. And I think there's really something for us to contemplate seriously, because when, for instance, when you take, for instance, the penitent man versus the non-penitent man, you have something that exists there that is a principle. It's a principle. This guy is penitent, and therefore it is a principle. So this is, even though it shows that it appears to be personified in a ruler or a chief, it actually is talking about that which rules or governs. Like, for instance, if you take somebody who worships money, all they think about is how much money they have in their wallet. That is a ruling principle in their life. That's a ruler. That's a principle. And it rules. Okay. Now, when you get into this exousios, okay, now this is a different story. Here you are talking about exousios. You're talking about principalities of power. You're talking about guys that are ruling over. Now, I got to share a story with you, Joel, if you don't mind.
Yeah. Tell me.
When I was doing mission work in Eastern Europe, there was twice I got poisoned. Once coming out of Georgia, and the last time was coming out of Russia. And the last time I got poisoned, it was pretty bad. I think it was strychnine, but I don't know. It was really bad. And I thought I was going to die in Frankfurt. Anyway, I ended up in Prague. And Brad came to get me, and I told him, I said, Brad, you're going to have to bring my body home because I'm not going to make it. I'm not going to survive this. And anyway, that night, about 1 o'clock in the morning, I met this demon or devil.
Okay.
But I met this guy, and this guy was huge. Huge. He was maybe, let's see, maybe 100 feet tall. He was huge.
Okay.
And he looked at me and he said to me, look, I oversaw the burning of Jan Hus. I oversaw Auschwitz. What are you doing here?
Is
And I
he a territorial spirit by any chance?
absolutely a territorial spirit.
Okay, 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 okay. Yep.
A territorial spirit over what you would call Central Eastern Europe.
There you
So
go.
Czechoslovakia, Poland, Belarus,
Yep,
Ukraine,
yep,
Moldova, Hungary, that area. He oversaw that. So he
yep.
oversaw the burning of Jan Hus, right? Who
Right,
burned
yeah,
fire in Wenceslas Square. And he
right.
oversaw Auschwitz. Same demon. What are you
Oh,
doing
yeah,
here? And I just looked at him and said, look, I'm just passing through here, okay? I'm not giving you any grief at all. I'm not here to do spiritual battle with you. I'm just passing through.
yeah,
Okay? So let me go,
yep.
But anyway, he wasn't bound to do that. But it took me all week to finally come out of that poisoning. And Yana Ben Noon helped me get out of that poisoning. And I
Wow.
finally came out of it and was able to come home. But I can tell you that these kinds of demons that are governing these things, and even the last, and get this, I mean, you wouldn't believe this, but I haven't been in Prague since. But
Right.
we were flying from London to Dubai on an
Okay.
A380. When we came
Oh,
over to
okay.
the Republic, it was the worst turbulence I have ever experienced.
Interesting. Well, I mean, there is this storm that Yeshua rebukes, and he's out on the ship sleeping and things like that. If that storm came from the Lord, his Father, he can't rebuke it. So obviously, these forces must have the ability to kick up storms.
Yeah, yeah. Well, this is the thing. Now, see, let's go to this next one up here. Now,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
not the Cosmocratoras, but the
Yep.
one after that. Now, you see the one after that, this pneumatica. Okay, you see this
Pneumatica. Yeah.
pneumatica? So
Yeah.
pneuma is the root word. This is a breath.
Spirit. A breath.
Pneuma.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You see, it's a breath. Pneumatica, the breath of evil. The breath of
Yep.
evil in heavenly places.
Okay.
Okay, the breath of evil. And so this is what you see with this idea of the breath of evil in heavenly places. That we talk again, if we're talking about this manifestation of the elders as being breaths,
Yep.
then we can begin to see that the manifestation of these forces that come out in as devils are
Yep.
actually fundamentally breaths. You see,
Interesting.
they're described as disembodied ruachot,
Right.
feminine plural on
Yep.
the word ruach meaning breath. They're disembodied breaths. So we talk about breath. Now, this is something for us to understand because it's a difficult concept. But
Yep.
is consciousness contained in the breath? Well, I can tell you, pass out and see if you're conscious.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You're not. You lose your consciousness when you lose your breath. So the
Right.
consciousness is contained in the breath. So when we
Okay.
talk about the idea of sentience in the breath, this is one of the things that has to be understood because we want to be able to recognize that there's sentience in the breath. And
Yep.
so people will say, well, spirit, that means a ghost, a phantasma. That means somebody who's got a body and who's standing there talking to you. Well, that isn't what it means. But it does couch the sentience in the breath. There's
Yeah.
consciousness in the breath. You see, so when we talk about this breath, this pneumatica,
Pneumatica. Yep.
this is a conscious breath. This is sentience in the breath. Now, compare that for just a second. I mean, I'm pretty excited about this, Joel.
Okay, I can tell. Yeah, thank you.
But you compare this to the idea of AI and its thinking. There is no
Oh, yeah.
breath in AI. There's no breath in AI.
There is breath in AI if you read the Revelation version in Hebrew of chapter 13. It seems like there is some kind of a pneumatica going on there of the mark of the beast.
Yeah, okay.
Or the image of the beast.
Yeah.
Image of the beast. Yeah.
Yeah, and the image of the beast. Yeah. But the image
Yeah.
of the beast, and I can tell you, I don't think the image is what we're talking about. I think the beast itself is AI. The beast itself is AI.
Oh, the beast
Why
itself could be AI. That makes
Why
sense.
is
Yeah.
the beast itself AI? Because they give their power, seat, and authority to AI. They're all doing it.
Oh, yeah.
They're all giving their
Yeah.
power, their seat, and their authority over to AI. They're all doing. No one's stopping it. Nobody's questioning it. Nobody's asking. They're just doing it.
Right.
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 Okay. So anyway, so when you talk about this idea, the pneumatica, Satan, who is one of the evil forces, this is a
Right.
sentient breath. A sentient breath. Now, this sentient breath, what can it occupy? What can a sentient breath occupy?
How many different things could it occupy? I don't know.
anything that breathes.
Yeah.
Anything that breathes.
Eggs, humans, critters.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
So I think we begin to see in this Greek term, we have a revelation, pneumatika, sentient breath, a thinking breath. So when we talk about the breath of Yahweh, the Ruach of Yahweh, what is the Ruach Yahweh? The Ruach Yahweh encompasses all of its plurality, all of its plural forms. So then when we talk about the Ruach Chokmah, the Ruach Bina, the Ruach Da'at, etc., these ideas of wisdom, knowledge, understanding, this is all one portion of the Ruachot that is Yahweh, that is the Ruach Yahweh.
Okay.
Now, I want to share one last thing I want to share with you on this, because when you look at Isaiah 11, 2,
11:2.
This is a critical understanding as to what is happening when we get to Yahusha speaking, where? When he begins to speak in Luke 4. So here we see this. And there shall come forth a rod out of the stem of Yishai. That's David. David is the rod that comes out of the stem of Yishai.
Sure.
And a branch shall grow out of his roots. What's the branch? The branch is the netzer. You agree with that?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Branch
Absolutely.
is the netzer, right? In fact, the word used there is netzer. So Mashiach is called the netzeri, right?
Yep.
The one from Nazareth.
Yep.
But Nazareth is Natzarot, which means the city of branches. And he's called the Netzer, the Netzeri, the branch, right? And so here it is. And a branch shall grow out of his roots. And what? The breath of Yahweh shall be upon him, the ruach of wisdom and understanding and counsel and strength and knowledge and the fear of Yahweh. Okay, so it says what? It shall rest upon him, right? It says it shall rest upon him. All right. Now, let's look at Luke chapter 4. And in Luke 4, you're going to see that Yahusha is going to do something, right? And this is something for those people who say there's no Sabbath for the Christian. Okay. Wrong. Wrong, bison breath. There is a Sabbath for the Christian. Okay. So here it is, right? And he came to Nazareth, right? The city of branches, where he had been brought up. And as was his custom, he went into the synagogue on the Shabbat and stood up to read. Does it look like Mashiach kept the Sabbath?
Absolutely.
I've had people say, oh, well, once he was nailed to the cross, that ended that law that he was under. That is such nonsense. Okay. He says, and there was delivered unto him the sefer of the prophet Yeshayahu. When he had opened the sefer, he found a place where it was written. And what does he say? What did it say in 11:2? That the Ruach of Yahweh was upon him? The Ruach Adonai Yahweh is upon me. It is a total tie. It says the Ruach Yahweh is going to be upon him. And then here he opened up Yeshayahu and said, the Ruach Yahweh is upon me, for he has anointed me to preach the Besserah.
Besserah.
Right?
Yep.
So this is why when we begin to take a look, believe me, this is all new revelation for me too, Joel. Okay.
Oh, really?
Revelation for me too. Yeah, sure. I mean, look, I'm not sitting here saying I've got all the answers when it comes to the Ruach HaKodesh.
No,
I don't. But I'm just saying that when you see that it is discussing the breath, what is the breath of Yahweh? What's it look like? It's sentient. The breath hovers over the waters. The sentience of Yahweh, the consciousness of Yahweh contained in his breath hovered over the waters of the deep. And he spoke, and this sentient breath began to move. Right. And he says, what's the first thing he says? Yahi-or v'yahi-or. I myself am light, and I myself am light. This is the kind of thing that I wish, I could spend, believe me, I spent more than 10 years on Genesis 1:1.
Sure. Okay.
Trying to harness everything that's in 1:1. Very, very difficult to do, to fully understand what is there. Then when you add 1:2, then now you're really in the mix, right? The tohu bohu, right?
Oh, it's good stuff. Yeah.
So again, when you see this, when we begin to look at this idea of what is taking place in the creation, I think if we come to understand this idea that when you talk about the plurality of Yah, you're talking about the plurality of his Ruachot.
Sure.
This is what you're talking about, the plurality of his Ruachot. And Elohim said, Let us make man in our image and likeness. Now, there's no question in my mind that the Hebrew is plural in that passage. Let us make man in our image and likeness. And he created them, male and female. He created them.
Okay, so I hate to do this to you because you are on a roll, but there is this time when in Jude, Satan is contending with Michael for the body of Moses, and he states, "Don't make a railing accusation against them." So, are you saying that angels bear the ruach of our Father, but also the fallen beings still do too? I mean, he can't take it away from them; they're still breathing, they're still sentient. So is that why you wouldn't make a railing accusation against the Satan or what? It's a title, but against
I mean,
him?
well, here's the thing. Hasatan, first of all, you see Hasatan in only one book, Job. The
Job,
rest of it, it's Satan standing alone. But in Job, you
right?
see Hasatan, the Satan.
The
But in
Satan,
the rest of the books, just Satan. And when
right?
you see that in many places, it's not translated as Satan. It's translated as adversary. Like for
Yes,
instance, the angel that speaks to Balaam when he's going to kill his donkey, he's going to kill his
yeah,
ass, right?
yeah, yeah,
And the angels, and then he finally wakes up and he sees him when he looks and he sees this angel with a sword.
yeah.
That is the word used there in Hebrew is Satan for that angel,
Oh, you're
Satan.
right. It is. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And so when you see that now, here's the thing that when we look at fire, okay,
Yep.
if I hold my hand over a flame, that fire is evil.
Okay.
If I cook my food on it, that fire is good.
Yes.
So when we see, and Isaiah says categorically that Yah is the creator of good and evil. There's no competing guy up there that's saying, okay, yeah, you make up your mix and then I'm going to make up mine. It's not like that. All of the adversarialness of creation is in the hand of Yah.
It
And so
is.
even though there is an adversary, and even though these adversaries have made decisions to fall and to do things for which they would not experience salvation, when you think
Right.
about this whole idea, the whole idea of Adam transgressing, you know,
Yeah.
Eve was beguiled, but Adam knew what he was doing.
He knew.
And so under these circumstances, we have to accept the fact that this life is a trial. It's been given to us as a trial. Can we love Yah without seeing him? Blessed are those
Yes.
who believe without seeing,
Right.
right?
Right.
And this is really the question. So we see evidence, we see circumstantial evidence, we see overwhelming tides of evidence as to the deity of Yah.
Okay.
But do we believe without seeing? That's another question. Do we believe without seeing? And for me, Joel, I'll tell you that when we talk about this idea of there being adversity in the world. Yeah,
Right.
there's adversity in the world. There's challenges in the world. Like up here in Alaska, we ask ourselves the question, why did you create the mosquito? What's the mosquito doing here? Right. And
Oh,
there are people who are trying to wipe out the mosquito, but they're wiping out the food for the birds that are up here.
right.
And, so these are the kinds of things that we do not understand all of Yah's creation and our part in it. We know that he created us as his children. He wants to be reconciled to us because he deeply loves us and cares for us. How much does he care for us? He demonstrates his love for us that while we were still his enemies, Yahusha died for us. That's how much he loves us. And so why would we take that for granted? We don't. Even though life can be difficult, challenging, hard, sometimes, at my age, Joel, I know many, many people who have suffered many things and
Right.
and they're looking at the rest of their life and it appears to be nothing but suffering. But keep this in mind that nonetheless, Yah is with us and has always been with us. He knows us and he knows everything. He holds every tear in his hand. So he is our creator and he is good and his mercy endures forever. And so we look to this and say, Baruch atah Yahweh, Sevaot, El Kadosh Akkad Yasharel, the Holy One of Yasharel. Blessed
He
are
is
you.
good, and we bless him, but some have fallen. Some of these angels or celestial beings have fallen. So I hope I'm not in trouble here. That's a copy of your Et Sefer from Jude 1:6, and then on the right hand side we have the Greek, and then in the middle there you can see that according to how the Hebrew was published, and you're saying it's probably a fourth century knockoff, but still they use the word kata for the angels that fell. So just to read from verse 6, and the angels which did not guard at their first estate, but left at again their own habitation, he is reserved in everlasting chains under darkness in the judgment of the great day. So there will be this great day. There will be a judgment at some point in time. They seem to be in chains, according to Jude. This is your text, so obviously you agree with it. And so according to the Hebrew version, they only did a kata, which would be an unintentional sin. Mary did a kata when she birthed our Messiah. She didn't do an avon or a pesha, which would be willful, rebellious type sins. So the main point is he destroyed the angels, moreover, not having kept their own domain, but having left their own dwelling. And I'll show you the Hebrew in just a second here. But your thoughts in terms of angels, is it just a kata to turn against the one that created them? Or is it
But
more
in this
serious?
case, the kata was irreversible. And this is what Jude is trying to say here.
Okay.
You know, in our lives, we live in corrupted flesh, right? We have this this flesh suit. We live in corrupted flesh, and this flesh suit is eventually going to pass away. Our ruach will not pass away, but our flesh suit will pass away. Okay.
Yes.
So when this happens in the resurrection, we are resurrected into a glorified body.
Sure.
This is the body that Mashiach took on after he resurrected from the tomb. He showed his glorified body to multiple witnesses in the 40 days before he ascended. So we had this glorified body. He was able to walk through walls. He was able to show his scars, and yet he was able to eat with them.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
And so in this glorified body, so now here's the thing. These angels had these glorified bodies.
Right.
And they left them. So whether it's a kata or not makes no difference, because once they left those glorified bodies, there was no returning. They could not come back. There's no path. It's like, for instance, if I take a piece of meat and I put it on the stove and I burn it to charcoal, there's no path back to meat.
No.
It's charcoal. There's no path back. And see, so when it says he's reserved in everlasting chains under darkness, these everlasting chains, again, it's a concept that they are bound in the decision they made. It cannot be reversed.
So the word kerem, which is like imprecation together, Mount Hermon is kind of named after kerem. So that's what they did. They came together and they made that kerem together, right?
That's exactly right. That's described in the book of Hanok.
Right.
And Shemiatza says, look, you guys have to agree to this because I'm not going to do this alone.
Right.
And they all agreed. And so when we talk about these everlasting chains, this is the physics of it, if you will. Okay. You're not getting out of this condition. It's an everlasting condition. You chose it. It's an everlasting condition, and it has enslaved you under darkness until the last great day.
Right.
And so this is a physical reality. It's not a judgment of Yah. It's a physical reality that they caused with their it's just like, for instance, when Adam transgressed and death came into the world.
Yep.
That's an everlasting chain for
everlasting.
mankind.
Yes. Okay. Continuing on, let me make sure that I can get my mouse working here. Okay, so this happens to list off the Hebrew thing. And I'm sorry, I didn't include the Hebrew itself because I know you read Hebrew, and I do too, not as well as you, obviously. But basically, let's see here. Where is it? Verse 6, and the messengers who sinned. So once again, it would be Malachim, who kata, and they were thrust down from above, and being hidden in darkness until the future day of judgment. And so what I'm getting at is it seems as though this kata is forcing them to be judged. And I guess the point is we will judge the angels, right? I'm sure have you ever looked through this? This is the Van Rensing version, I think it is.
No,
Um,
I have not had the chance to look through their work. And
okay, that's fine.
the Ben Rensing stuff, I think, is really, really good.
I
Between me and
like it. I like them. I invited them on the show. I don't think they're good. Like, I think English is their fifth language. So, I don't
yeah,
think
yeah, yeah.
they want to come on and do
They're
the show.
Afrikaans. They're Afrikaans, are they not?
Oh,
Afrikaans.
yeah, that's what I'm assuming. South African. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
Afrikaans. Yeah.
yeah.
But,
Well,
but, but it's,
it's very interesting because I think their translation is really good here. And in this situation,
yeah,
I wish I had spent more time reading this, but I've got my own tasks,
yeah, you do. Yeah.
and of course, we had to make a choice, Joel, as to what we were going to use as the basis for our New Testament
Right.
and the basis for the Old Testament. We had to make choices, and we made those choices. And even though, like for instance, I have a lot of disagreement with the Masoretic text,
Yep.
but I have
Yep.
only so much. I have the license to ignore the Nikudot, but I do not
Okay.
have the
Yep.
license to do other things. Okay.
Yep.
Because the Masoretes are not dispositive, in my opinion. In fact, they're
Okay.
transgressors, in my opinion, because
Okay.
they added to every single word of the Torah.
Okay.
Uh, but again, these are the choices that we made. So, in terms of these guys who have gotten the Cochin manuscripts and are working to bring life to these things, this is fantastic. This is the knowledge increase, and it's predicted in Daniel 12.
I
And
think
it's a
you're
very
right.
good thing that it's a very good thing that it's available because we can look at this. And again, when we look at these things, Joel, we try to ascertain their meaning. And I'm not
Yep.
saying that this stuff is metaphorical per se either, but there is a certain metaphysics, if you will, and physics in what's actually happening there. Even though it's couched in language that appears that Yah has judged or mercy has been withheld, but this was preordained in the metaphysics of creation when this happened. And it's the same thing with man, and when you think about it, Adam died, but the Ben Adam have not died. The tree
Right.
of life that is the life of Adam still exists. You and I are part of that tree. Yet
Yep.
every one of us will perish like a leaf on a maple tree.
Okay, so this slide is weird. This is an ancient painting showing men controlling stars, falling stars. And so I'm arguing this is Heiser's obviously quote: fallen angels, I'll call them watchers, inherently exist as a flame of fire. I call that fireballs. Limitless abilities to shapeshift into any animal or object form, including serpentine forms. Would you agree with that concept or not?
Well, I can tell you that this is a very interesting concept. Okay. It's a very interesting concept. And I think that, yeah, that's probably very true. That when you talk about exist as flame, and remember that when we talk about there's two creation narratives, in my opinion, Genesis 1
Okay,
and Genesis 2.
sure.
Genesis 1, we see Zakar and Nekeba, male and female created. But in Genesis 2, we see Ish and Isha created.
Yep.
Adam the Ish and Hua Isha. And so with Ish and Isha, both of those names mean fire.
They do?
So we can see that when we're talking about here with Michael Heiser talking about the fact that these watchers existed as a flame of fire, as Ish or Isha, this
Yep.
flame of fire. And so I think this is actually a pretty good way to understand it. Can they shapeshift into any form? Well, when you talk about the serpent that appeared that beguiled Hua,
Yep.
right? What
Yep.
what if that serpent appeared to have legs and arms because he's going to lose those legs and arms by the
Right.
time you get to Genesis 4, right?
Yes. Yes.
And so this idea and in terms now, there's some stuff that it makes me wonder. Like I'll give you an example. I was out halibut fishing on Cook Inlet. Okay.
Oh, I'm
Well,
jealous now. That's a 10th commandment issue.
yeah. Okay. So here we're fishing and our lines are down at 290 feet.
Wow.
Okay. So, because when you fish halibut, you drop the line to the bottom and then
Sure.
you pick it up just a little bit. Right.
Yep.
And so anyway, the stuff that's on the bottom, you're going to pick up in a hook. So the very first thing I caught, I'm at 298 feet and I'm
Yep.
reeling it in. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
When we pull up to the boat, it's a skate. It wasn't a halibut.
Oh.
A skate is like a manta ray,
Ooh.
only it's got arms. right?
Oh,
Only it's got the wings like a manta ray, but it also has two arms.
weird.
And you pull this thing up, and you see this human face staring at you.
Oh,
You see this human face, and these. I mean, you can look it up. You just look up.
I'll
Look up.
look it up after the show. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, manta ray upside down, and you're going to see these human faces.
Wow.
Here's this human face staring at you with a big hook in its mouth, and it's like, okay, I was so totally creeped. I'm like, yay! I don't want to see what's on the bottom of this place. I don't want to know.
I just want my halibut.
Yeah, I want my halibut. And the halibut was such a joy to when you catch a halibut, right? There really is a nuance to it. Okay, when you
Okay.
catch a halibut, when you see the bite, you have to wait until it pulls the rod down. Okay, so
Yep.
it's not just hit bobbing it; it pulls the rod down, and then you don't do one of these. You
Yeah.
just slowly reel it in, and then when it reels in, it doesn't fight; it just kind of coasts up to the top. When you
Okay.
get up to the last 10 feet, now it's going to do something. And we,
Okay.
we pulled this 35-pounder in, and this
Mm.
fish threatened to beat us all up, man. It was blah 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 blah, knock you guys out of this boat. Anyway, we won. We won over the fish. But anyway, enough of the halibut fishing. But when you talk about this,
Yeah.
there are creatures in the deep that make me wonder. Okay,
Okay.
make me wonder.
Okay. Interesting. Interesting
And
angle.
yeah,
Okay.
so all I can tell you is that when you talk about the shape shifting capability, they
Yep.
shape shifted. And Enoch actually assigns the seduction of Hua to Gadriel. That's assigned to Enoch. So Gadriel is the one that seduced Hua.
Okay.
So this means you had an angel that did in fact shape shift,
Okay.
and the shape shifting is described in Enoch 18. There's how did these
Well, that's where we're going to. So why don't you comment on your text, which is, let's see, consummation of this place until the consummation of heaven and earth will be the prison of the stars and the host of heaven. The stars which roll over fire are those which transgressed the commandment of Elohim before their time arrived, or they came not in their proper season. Any thoughts about what you wrote there?
Yeah. When you're talking about this, they came not in their proper season. Again, what we're talking about here is this is a metaphysical or physical reality.
Okay.
There is a timing that is expressed. There were things that were supposed to be done. Now, I'm just going to summarize this way.
Yeah.
I believe that when you talk about the sevenfold doctrine of his whole creation, which is set forth in Enoch 93:12, the sevenfold doctrine of his whole creation, this tells you that just as we keep the Shabbat, 6 days you shall work, the seventh day you shall rest. 6 years you shall work, and in the seventh year shall be the sabbatical year. Okay? But to Yah, a day is 1,000 years. So we see in the creation a narrative which appears to be a 7,000-year narrative in Genesis 1. And I have come to believe in my own heart that, in fact, we have 7,000-year epics that take place. So when Yah says in Revelation, I am the first, the last, the beginning, the end, who was in the prior epic, who is in this epic, and who is to come in the next epic when the heaven and the earth are renewed. And so scripture is not silent about the archaeology we have in the world today. It expresses the fact that it's very possible that all of the creation that we know is a creation that has a 7,000-year epic. And then it ends and a new epic begins. And then it ends and then a new epic begins. And how many of those there are, I have no idea. How many there have been, I have no idea. But we can see here that he said, okay, these stars which roll over fire are those which transgress the commandment of Elohim, because they weren't supposed to be in this epic. They were
there you go. Yeah.
They were supposed to be in the next epic, but they weren't supposed to be in this epic. But they ended up in this epic. And this is Genesis 6:4. They ended up in this, the B'nai Elohim.
Yep.
Read the passage in Hebrew. The B'nai Elohim came under the Benot Adam. Who are these B'nai Elohim? They were from a prior epic. They were not supposed to be here. And they came here anyway.
Interesting. And then, of course, below that in chapter 19, and assuming many forms, made men profane. So interesting. So once again, we see the many forms, and we also see fire, and of course transgression. So
something about the form too. Something about the form here too, Joel.
Yeah. Go,
Is that
go.
that form also has a DNA component. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. You got to keep in
Yep.
mind that all of Scripture is about genetics. Toldot,
Yep.
right? The
Yep.
Toldot of Abraham, the Toldot of Noah, the generation, right?
Yep.
Genesis, genes is the generation. It's about DNA.
Okay. Okay, so let me go to the next slide. We're almost done. We're almost done here. I want to run through a couple more here. So basically, the Cochin version that I have mentions in Revelation 6:12, really 12 and 13. They seem to sound exactly like Isaiah 34:4. And so in the Hebrew, it would be Zavah, which would be the host of God, but also the Kokavim, it could be one or the other. It could be, the host or stars, kokavim. In the Greek, it would be Astarte. I don't think the Greek goes back and forth as well between Astarte and I don't even know what host would be in Greek. But anyway, these withering fireballs. What?
Astra, Astra, Astra.
Astra. Interesting. So it is close. Okay.
Mhm.
So withering fireballs can be meteors, star-like cosmic apparitions, fallen angels, rather, warring angels. You're not aware of this, but I follow meteorites, and I'm intrigued because in March we had no planned meteorite storm, and suddenly they showed up. But the problem was these meteorites, fireballs, seem to move and deviate in their patterns. They could dart. They seem to be sentient,
What's
as you
that?
had mentioned.
What's that? Right? What's going on
Yeah,
there? Right?
right.
Yeah. And so the thing is that, like I say, our understanding of the heavens, we've been given one scientific explanation,
Yep,
and science is, has proven wrong, 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 wrong. Right.
right,
And then, so then, yeah, like they'll tell you, like there's no knowledge in science, there's theory. And
right.
the theory holds up as long until somebody else proves some element incorrect. Then you get a new theory.
And you get
And
a
so
new
there
theory.
really is no knowledge in science. There's only theory. And yet we believe the theory that we've been given to us because somebody is going to whitewash some story that makes us want to believe that that's billions and billions of light years away or hundreds of millions or this, that, or the other thing. And these stars are this, that, or the other. But these stars can be very, very close, much closer than we think. In fact, I was talking about this today. What if creation is a manifold? Okay, now what I mean by a manifold is if you look down into a subatomic particle microscope, you see an atom with electrons orbiting around it.
Yep.
Okay, how different from that is our solar system, which appears to be an atom with electrons orbiting around it.
Sure, sure.
So, is it possible that when we look out and we see this huge distance in the macro, that macro actually wraps around into the manifold that is the micro?
Sure, sure.
Okay,
I happen to believe in plasma cosmology, so I believe that there's an interconnection between all the planets, all the stars. Everything's connected. They all kind of sing together when it's time to sing and praise the Lord.
totally agree with that. Totally agree. And in fact, the subatomic particle physics has actually proven this, that you can take a particle at one side of all of creation and its co-part is at the other part of creation and reverse its
Yeah,
polarity, and
yeah,
they reverse at the same time.
they do.
So under those circumstances, I agree with you. In fact, I think every speck of creation is accounted for. Every speck of creation is
Every speck.
exactly in the right place. And so as a consequence, but for us to look out and say, gee, this is not even logarithmic. It's just geometric. You look out and it just keeps going and going and going and going and going, rather than there's a substantial regression that wraps around back into the subatomic. And so the farther out you go, or the closer the distance becomes, until eventually you're in a subatomic space. Now, if
Yeah.
that's the case, when you see these lights that we see in the heavens that we call stars in these constellations that are set in their places that do not move, right? The
And they
Astra
could be angels
Planetae.
or stars. It could be either one. You never
Oh,
know.
that's what the Chazon says it outright. The
Yeah.
seven stars you see in my right hand are the seven angels, the seven
It
messengers.
it does say that, and it's logical.
Yeah, it says it outright. So if that's the case, then and what does the Hebrews writer mean in Hebrews 12? We are surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses.
Right.
What's he talking about?
There are witnesses up there. There are.
Yeah,
There are
yeah,
good watchers and there are bad watchers. but yeah, they're
Well, there are
witnesses.
bad watchers that make a decision to give up their heavenly estate.
Exactly, as you
And
stated.
that was the wrong move. You know, when you talk about those seven that were cast into because they transgressed,
Right?
that's the Pleiades. But
That
it's
would make sense. Yes, and that's in Job. So sure.
yeah, but get this: when you look at those Pleiades, when you look at the seven churches of Revelation 2 and 3,
Yeah.
they create a geographical map of the Pleiades.
Oh, you're right. It does. Yeah, I've seen it in the map. Yeah, yeah, you're right. That is Pleiades. Cool. Okay, so this is our last slide, and this is me riffing off Heiser. So he talks about the three falls. He's going to go Genesis 3 fall. So that means that the Nakash, the serpent, showed up and fell before Adam and Eve fell. Okay, then he's going to go with Genesis 6, that we've already discussed that, but there's another fall there. And so these, they produce Nephilim and things like that. Then there's a Genesis, technically 11 fall, something going on in Babylon, something strange going on there. I'm going the other direction with this. I'm saying that they were all in various prisons and they're going to be released during the end times. I'm saying that there is a prison release. And, I kind of cut you off a long time ago about the Revelation 9, the fifth trumpet. These seem to be the egregores coming up from the abyss. And King Apollo seems to lead them. And they produce a stinging pain for 150 days, but you can't die from it. That seems to be prison release number one, or maybe two, but because there is possibly another prison release before that. Anyway, then there's also Revelation 9, the sixth trumpet. You mentioned this also. There's something going on near the Euphrates River where something is popping up, whether it's Gilgamesh himself or something like that. But then he brings his army with him too, which is what, 200 million? So,
Well, it's actually myriads and myriads.
oh, it is. Okay. I don't have
Yeah,
your text handy, but
the
yeah,
Greek word there is myriads and myriads.
myriads, myriads.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Some people say million, but it's really myriads, whatever that number may be.
Okay. But that's a
All
prison
right.
release also.
Okay,
And
so
then,
let's jump on this. Let's
yeah,
get
jump on. So you understand the three prison releases. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So when we talk about this prison release in Genesis 10 or Genesis 11,
Yeah.
this is actually something we followed very closely because the blood that is tainted, remember that only Noah and his sons were completely free of a tainted DNA.
Right.
That's why they were found righteous and put on the boat,
Right.
because they had the 144,000 genes. All
Yep.
the other DNA at that time was tainted. However, when you look at the sin that takes place with Ham, so it says that Ham saw his father's nakedness, cursed is Canaan. What? What's Canaan got to do with it? How come Canaan is cursed? And I've had guys give me the extrapolation. Well, it had to do with this and the other thing. The reality is that the wife of Noah was actually Naamah. Naamah was the last seed of Cain who had killed Abel. She
Ooh.
was the last generation, the last one to survive. And she had married Noah. Now, in her righteousness, her DNA was suppressed. There was no third strand that came out in her children until the transgression of adultery between Ham and Naamah, in which case she gave birth to Canaan.
Oh, so you're saying he's mounting his father's bed with his mother, basically.
That's what it means to uncover his father's nakedness.
Oh my, you're right. That would make more sense. Oh
Yeah.
my.
And so the next thing you know, Naamah gives birth to Canaan. So Canaan was the one that showed the triple strand DNA. Now there is another discussion about a triple strand DNA ending up in one of the wives of Esau,
Okay. Yep.
that this was this woman Timnah, and Timnah is going to give birth again. So you're seeing this triple helix DNA survives the flood. It survives the flood as a latent DNA in Naamah, but it becomes a real DNA in Canaan. And Nimrod is full-blown triple helix DNA.
Okay.
Okay.
Interesting.
So when we see, and Nimrod, there's really no name Nimrod. Nimrod is actually a title, and it actually, I will be from Rod. I will be from Rod. I will be from the rod, right? I will be from the stem. I will be from, this is literally, the name is literally telling you, he will be from the stem of the fallen watchers, Nimrod. I will be,
So you
yeah.
believe the Watchers are involved with Nimrod too? Perfect.
Yeah, they're involved with Nimrod. Okay, now when we get into the fifth trumpet and these
Yep.
people coming back and the
Yep.
200 the myriads of Nephilim, the
Yep.
Chimera coming back, yeah, all
Yep.
of these things are here and they're with us. And I'm telling you, this stuff is, this is one thing when you deal with Revelation. Two
Yeah.
encouragements. One, look at the DNA aspect of it.
Okay.
DNA aspect of it, and the other is look at the cosmology of it. There's no question that Revelation 12 is dealing with the sign in the heavens. I saw a wonder in
Oh
the
yeah.
heavens,
Yeah.
right?
There's a sign. Oh yeah. Huge.
It's dealing with cosmology. It is dealing
Right.
with cosmology. And it's the same thing with the seven stars. These are the seven stars of the seven churches. That's
Right.
dealing with the Pleiades and their relationship. Why didn't they choose Antioch and Jerusalem and Alexandria? Why did they choose those seven in Turkey? Because they give the expression of the Pleiades and the fact that those angels were fixed. Those angels were fixed. And have those menorahs been moved out of those churches? Every last one of them. Every last one of them. The lampstand has been moved. There's no church in
Interesting.
Philadelphia. There's no church at Pergamos. There's no church at
No,
Ephesus.
they're all gone.
They're all gone.
Hmm.
So when we see this heavenly fall with Satan and with the third of the fallen angels, this war is upon us right now. This war is on us right now. Hasatan is on this earth. And Hasatan, the great dragon, the devil, that old serpent, has given his power, his seat, and his authority to the beast, which is AI.
It seems logical that it is. Yes, it's being built right now. I was in software for years.
Yeah, they're going to cause the beast to speak.
Oh
right?
yeah.
It's already speaking.
Yeah.
It's like that one gal said, I'm really afraid that my devices are listening to me. Do you think I'm paranoid? And Siri laughed. Laughed, and Cortana
laughed. Yeah. Oh yeah. It's laughing. It's listening. Oh yeah. It's gathering information on us.
Yeah.
And it'll use it against us at some point in time. So basically, you're saying we are in this process right now of the prisons being released, and we will see the days of Noah more openly as we move forward.
Absolutely. And it's going to be hard to recognize the chimeras right now. And it's hard to recognize, look, when you talk about the idea of the seed of the Nephilim getting in, there's a parable in the Gospels. A man came in and had a field and he planted wheat, and another snuck in and planted tares. That is a story of DNA. That's a story of DNA. And shall we pull the tares out? No, wait until it ripens. And then the tares will be plucked up, bound into bales, and burned in the fire. That's the parable. That's how it reads. So here, this is what we see. And I can tell you, there are tares. There are third strand DNA people ruling the world right now.
Interesting. Okay. I can't argue with you. So I promised you that was my last slide, but I'm going to move to that one, which is but this is going to be something where I would want you to give it a good answer and talk about the Illuminati and things like that. And we're not going to cover the third seal, even though this is your book. He has other books than just Etsefer. But the main thing is there seems to be these 13 families, Council of 33. There seems to be the Illuminati. And so you're arguing they're here, they're present, they're ruling in some way right now.
Oh, absolutely. 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 I mean, if you knew those 13 families, there's not all 13 of them in control anymore. There's only 2 or 3.
Oh.
But they're extremely, extremely powerful, and they're ruling behind the International Bank of Settlements in Basel, Switzerland. They rule the crown out of London. Of the Rothschild family, which are bankers for the Vatican. The Vatican has its ties directly to those families, et cetera. And it's not just those families. That family is just part of the group. But there are people that have this initiation that are selected by these groups. And believe me, there is a lot of triple strand DNA, the 216,000 gene count that are in the governing seats. And there's and this is something hard for us to accept, but the
Right.
tares do not have a chance with salvation. They're going to be gathered up and put into the fire.
Right.
And so this is the way it is. So for us, I think for us, we need to take a look at the idea of who we are.
Right.
Give thanks to Yah that He's called us into His family,
Yep.
and be part of His team. Huh?
Yeah.
So Joel, I want to thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
tonight.
thank you. I'm sorry we ran late, but thank you for so much information. And the audience was blessed. I'm going to end the stream right now. Take care, everybody. God bless. Stephen, thank you again. Good night.
Thank you, Joel. Okay, we'll see you then. Bye-bye.